Chapter 1439. Sure enough, the cultivator slapped his hand again and took out something that looked like a talisman from his storage bag. He handed it to Xianxia with a smile and said, "This is a talisman that can break the restriction of a cultivation method. You'll know once you use it." And Qingma also handed over the booklet and said with a smile, "Please, this cultivation method is yours now." Then, he looked at the cultivator who was standing there in a daze and said with a smile, "Fellow cultivator, please go back. Fellow cultivator's mother-child spirit fruit is very good, but it's still not old enough. Please." At this moment, the cultivator came to his senses. He turned his head and muttered, How is this possible? How can there be such an old mother-child spirit fruit?" Xianxia suppressed the excitement in his heart and took the thick booklet. He activated his spiritual power and the runes on the talisman gradually flowed. Then he slapped his hand and pressed it on the booklet. A burst of bright light flashed and the words, "Heavenly Laws Embodiment Technique," appeared on the booklet. Xianxia pretended to be very casual and flipped through it a few times. He nodded and said, "Yes, this is the complete cultivation method. Those juniors of this old man are really blessed." Then, he slapped his hand and put the Heavenly Laws Embodiment Technique into his storage bag. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, fellow cultivator." "You're welcome, you're welcome." The cultivator also returned the greeting and said, "If you want to say thanks, I still have to thank fellow cultivator." After the two finished speaking, they both came down from the high platform. "Who is this cultivator? Why is he sitting down? How can he have a mother-child spirit fruit that's older than 300 years? Jianghu of the Xianxia sect had a gloomy expression. He stared at Xiaohua's back as he skipped back and racked his brains. "At least 800 years. The old man from the Xuanyan sect also muttered. Xiaohua took out the mother-child spirit fruit very quickly. But the speed at which the cultivator put away the mother-child spirit fruit was even faster. He also didn't see clearly, but the thick golden runes on the mother-child spirit fruit were deeply imprinted in his mind. Who is this cultivator in camouflage? Why would he be willing to take out a complete cultivation technique for the sake of the mother-child spirit fruit? Even shopkeeper Lu of the Imperial Alchemy sect, who only had supreme-grade spirit stones and no mother-child spirit fruit, looked at the disappearing figure of the Mi Lu cultivator with a pensive look on his face. At this moment, Qingma's voice sounded, "Thank you all for your support. This auction has come to a successful conclusion. The next auction will be held in 1 month as usual." Before Mo could finish his words, Xiaohua saw a few people standing up from their seats and quickly walking towards the outside of the hall. Xiaohua thought for a moment and understood that these people were the cultivators who had won the pills and magic tools during the auction. So he immediately stood up and walked towards the direction where those people had disappeared. At this moment, on the high platform where Qingma was standing, a brilliant light shone again, illuminating the entire hall on the second floor. The number of disciples in the treasure auction pavilion had decreased significantly. Only a few disciples were standing beside the stairs leading to the first floor. "Senior, this way please." Seeing Xiaohua rush over, a disciple greeted him from afar. "Aha," Xiaohua vaguely replied. "Senior, don't worry, there are no more disciples on the first floor. Senior can just leave from where you came from. Also, Senior doesn't need to worry, the restriction on the first floor has a spatial spell, so Senior won't be with others. Once Senior takes off the camouflage and leaves with others, no one will recognize you." The disciple saw that Xiaohua was in a hurry and was not as calm as the previous people, so he kindly reminded him. "Is that so?" When Xiaohua heard this, he understood that he was a bit obsessed, so he paused for a moment and slowly walked down the stairs. Sure enough, as the disciple said, not a single disciple on the first floor could see him. Xiaohua calmly walked into the darkness of the restriction. In the darkness, Xiaohua kept the cultivation technique and other things into his space, then took off the camouflage. After waiting for a moment, he thought that it was about time. Then he calmly walked out. Outside the treasure auction pavilion, it was already past noon, and the bright sun was already slightly to the west. Hundreds of cultivators rushed out of the treasure auction pavilion and entered the plaza in the middle of the city. It looked a bit crowded, but when they really scattered in the plaza, they were all blocked by the huge pillars, and in a moment they seemed scattered. "Fellow Taoist Xiao." A voice sounded from the side of a huge pillar. Xiaohua looked over and saw that it was Xue Xue. Io, fellow Taoist Shui. Xiao Hua's face was full of smiles. He quickly walked forward, cupped his hands, looked left and right, and said in a low voice, "Congratulations, you made a small profit." Hee. Isn't this all thanks to fellow Taoist Xiao? Shui had bright eyes and white teeth, and the smile on her face was very bright. She cupped her hands and said, "I also didn't expect that this clear fragrance pill would actually be so popular. If I had known earlier, I would have gotten more marrow cleansing pills from Imperial Pill School." But, fellow Taoist Xiao, you took so many clear fragrance pills and clean lotus pills. Why didn't you bid? Hee. Fellow Taoist Shui and Imperial Pill School have both put up their pills this time. How much can I bid for with these pills? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he said in a low voice, "This time, the treasure auction pavilion has put up so many pills, there will definitely be a lot of cultivators who will come after hearing the news in the next auction. Hee. By that time, will fellow Taoist Shui and Imperial Pill School still have so many pills?" Io, fellow Taoist Xiao. When Shui heard this, her face was filled with astonishment. She raised her hand and gave him a thumbs up. She repeatedly said, "Hi. This poor Taoist truly admires you." "I'm ashamed." Xiao Hua secretly wiped his cold sweat. Then he heard Shui say with some regret, "Unfortunately, I will be going out in a few days, and I'm afraid I won't be able to return for a few months. Otherwise, I would like to see how many spirit stones fellow Taoist Xiao can earn." "There will be a chance," Xiao Hua said with a smile. But right at this moment, a faint divine sense was suddenly sent out from afar, and it swept over Xiao Hua's body. "Oh no!" Xiao Hua's heart thumped. Although his face was calm, he had long been muttering in his heart. "When I came out, it seemed like there were a lot of cultivators in the surroundings. It's not very likely that someone would know. Moreover, this divine sense seems to belong to an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. There's no reason for it to pay attention to a small character like me, right? Fellow Taoist Xiao? Your complexion doesn't look too good." Shui saw that Xiao Hua was in a daze, so she quickly asked, "Yes, what's wrong?" Xiao Hua came back to his senses and waved his hand repeatedly. "No, it's nothing." Then he sighed and said, "Sigh, thinking about that auction, there were so many good things, but I couldn't bid for a single one. It's really regretful. Especially that cultivation technique." "Of course." Shui also echoed. "I also didn't expect that a complete cultivation technique would appear. How about?" At this time, the divine sense that swept over Xiao Hua's body gradually withdrew, and Shui stuck out her tongue at the same time. "There's no need. That last cultivator actually took out a mother-child spirit fruit that's even older than 300 years old. I'm afraid I can't take it out. If fellow Taoist can't take it out, I can't take it out even more. So, it's just a pity. It's useless." Xiao Hua also spread his hands. "All right, fellow Taoist Xiao, don't you have other fellow Taoists? Why did you come out alone?" Shui slapped her forehead, thought of something, and looked left and right. Xiao Hua was also puzzled. At this time, there were already a lot of cultivators coming out of the treasure auction pavilion. Why hadn't Wuxia appeared yet? Could it be? There's no need to think about any other possibilities. Just as Xiao Hua turned his head, Wuxia's figure appeared at the entrance of the treasure auction pavilion. "Fellow Taoist Kai." Xiao Hua saw Wuxia looking left and right, and immediately shouted. Seeing Xiao Hua wave his hand, Wuxia slightly nodded, but when she saw Shui next to Xiao Hua, Wuxia slightly frowned. When she got closer, she cupped her hands and smiled. "This is fellow Taoist Shui, right? I'm Liu Yang's Kai family's Wuxia. I heard fellow Taoist Xiao mention you the day before yesterday. I still have to thank fellow Taoist Shui for your invitation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to participate in this auction." Hee, no need to thank. I and fellow Taoist Xiao each did what we needed, no need to thank me. Shui casually waved her hand, and then casually asked, "I wonder what fellow Taoist Kai obtained in the auction." "I wanted spirit stones, but I didn't have spirit stones. I wanted mother-child spirit fruit, but I didn't have mother-child spirit fruit." What could I have obtained? I was just casually looking around. Xianxia said with a smile. Xue still wanted to say something, but a crimson-red message talisman flew over from afar and stopped in front of her. Xue clapped her hands and took the message talisman in her hand. She looked into the distance, then cupped her hands and said, I will bid farewell to these two beauties. If fate wills it, we'll meet again in the future. Beauties? Xiaohua was greatly embarrassed. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, Fellow Taoist Xue, you're mistaken. Who would have thought that although Xiaoxia's face was red, she still cupped her hands and said, Fellow Taoist Xue, we'll meet again someday. Hee, we'll meet again someday. Xue said and quickly walked away. That. Xiaohua opened his mouth, wanting to ask why, but when Xianxia turned her head and asked him, What's wrong, fellow Taoist Xiao? He felt that he didn't know where to start, so he could only smile and say, No, nothing. If fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't have anything to do in Yenyuan City, let's quickly go to Shihuang Town. There's still quite a distance from Shihuang Town to Yanlin Marsh. Xiaoxia's tone was somewhat indifferent. I'm still waiting to return to Luyang. Okay, I'll listen to fellow Taoist Kai's instructions. Xiaohua didn't know why Xiaoxia's tone suddenly changed, but he still nodded. Yenyuan City's teleportation array was on the west side of the plaza. It was a courtyard that looked like a garden. The door of the courtyard was wide open. 4 armored Yenyuan City guards stood on both sides of the door. They looked straight ahead, giving off a very imposing feeling. Fellow Taoist Kai. Xiaohua followed Xianxia to the courtyard. As they walked towards the door, he asked in a low voice, This is the teleportation array of Yenyuan City? Why aren't there any cultivators going in and out? Fellow Taoist Xiao, what do you think it should be like? People coming and going? Endless flow? Xianxia's face was a little strange as she asked in a low voice. Chapter 1440. That's right. Although it doesn't have to be an endless stream, it shouldn't be so deserted. Xiaohua looked at the deserted hall and said strangely, Fellow Taoist Xiao, please follow me in. You'll know when the time comes. Xianxia replied indifferently. When Xiaohua and Xianxia walked in front of them, a city guard stepped forward and said loudly, Fellow Taoists, do you want to use the transportation formation of my Yenyuan City? Yes, we want to go to Shihuang Town. We came here to register a few days ago. I wonder if we can go today. Xianxia cupped her hands and said, Shihuang Town? Please wait a moment. As he spoke, the city guard took out a disc-shaped magic tool from his waist and struck it with a yellow talisman in his left hand. A cluster of misty light was emitted from the disc. The city guard looked at it and said with a smile, So it's fellow Taoist Xianxia. What a coincidence. There are 3 other fellow Taoists who are also going to Shihuang Town. The appointment is also today. Please follow me in. Xianxia frowned. The other 3 fellow Taoists are all male cultivators? Yes. The city guard waved his hand and the light on the disc disappeared. He raised his hand and said with a smile, Fellow Taoists, please follow me. As he spoke, he took the lead and walked into the courtyard. Xiaohua looked at them with a puzzled expression. When he saw Xianxia walk in, he also followed and didn't ask a single question. Inside the courtyard, there were some strange flowers and plants, as well as some fake mountains and huge rocks. It looked very pleasing to the eye. After walking through a few corridors, they arrived in front of a room. The city guard smiled and said, Fellow Taoists, please wait inside. The other 3 fellow Taoists should be here soon. And thank you. Xianxia cupped her hands and walked into the room. Xiaohua nodded at the city guard and followed her in. This was a room that was neither big nor small. There weren't many decorations inside. Only 5 chairs and 5 tables were neatly placed inside. Xianxia seemed to be used to it. She directly picked up a chair and sat down, closing her eyes without saying a word. Why is she so strange? When Xiaohua saw Xianxia's abnormal reaction, he was somewhat puzzled. However, he didn't know where to start, so he just casually sat beside her. After waiting for a while, Xiaohua still didn't see anyone enter. He simply immersed his mind into the space, comprehending the trajectory of the heavenly Tao. Just as he had gained some insight, he was awakened by a commotion. When he opened his eyes, the sky was already a little dark. It seemed that a long time had passed. He looked at Xianxia beside him. Her face was still cold. At this moment, she also opened her eyes and raised her head to look at the door. At the entrance, another city guard led 3 cultivators in a single file. "Fellow Taoists, are you heading to Xihuang town as well?" the city guard asked expressionlessly. "That's right." Xiaohua nodded. "All right, this is the teleportation formation talisman. Take it." The city guard didn't beat around the bush. He took out 5 2-finger-wide yellow talismans from his bosom and handed them to Xiaohua, Xianxia, and the 3 cultivators who came in later. Only now did Xiaohua carefully size up these 3 cultivators. The 3 cultivators were of average height. 2 of them were tanned and strong with a fierce face. The last one was fair and clean, looking somewhat weak. However, the 3 of them were in the 7th layer of qi refinement, so Xiaohua didn't dare to underestimate them. The city guard gave the 5 talismans to the 5 cultivators and said, "Fellow Taoists, please pay me the spirit stones used for the teleportation. Each teleportation costs 5 high-grade spirit stones." Fellow Taoists, it's exactly 1 high-grade spirit stone for each of you. Ah! After listening to the words of the city guard, Xiaohua finally understood what Xianxia was talking about at the entrance. Every teleportation requires a piece of high-grade spirit stone, so expensive, no wonder. Not many cultivators are willing to use this teleportation array. Fortunately, Xiaohua was no longer as distressed as he was in Jianghu City. He patted his storage pouch, took out 2 high-grade spirit stones, and handed them over. Xianxia originally wanted to take it, but when she saw Xiaohua take it, she also put down her hand. However, the expression on her face seemed to be somewhat relaxed. The city guard kept the spirit stones and walked straight to the corner of the room. He took out another round plate from his chest. This round plate was different from the previous one. The city guard activated his Fa Li and pointed his finger. A pale yellow light beam shot out from the round plate and shone on the wall in the corner of the room. Not long after, the corner of the wall began to gradually melt and a round moon door appeared in front of everyone. "Fellow Taoists, please follow me." The city guard put away the disc, waved his hand, and took the lead to walk through the moon gate. "Fellow Taoists, please." The slightly weak cultivator of the 3 raised his hand and said with a smile. "Please." Xiaohua and Xianxia both nodded and followed the city guard in. Just now, when they were in the room, they couldn't see the situation inside the moon gate. Only after Xiaohua stepped through the moon gate did he see the situation inside clearly. This was a rather large space, and the first thing Xiaohua saw was a not-so-large spirit design. This array was in the shape of an oval, and it was located in the center of the space. The array emitted a gray color, and one could vaguely see black and white alternating rapidly. Xiaohua looked at it a few times, but he couldn't tell what this array was made of. He also couldn't tell if the array was on the ground or embedded in the ground. Soon after, Xiaohua looked around and saw that there were walls flickering with a faint white light everywhere in this space. Above his head was a tall roof. Looking at the distance, he was afraid that it was more than 10 feet high. The strange runes on the roof weren't blurred because of the distance. Instead, they were very clear, as if they were right in front of him. Around the walls, there were dozens of armored city guards evenly surrounding the entire space, which also happened to surround the formation in the middle. "Fellow Taoists, please stick the teleportation formation on your body. Enter the teleportation formation." The city guard said. "This one will go and ask the elder to come over." When the city guard turned around and left, Xiaohua and the other 4 people entered the formation. The formation wasn't big, so it was just right for the 5 of them to stand inside. Xiaohua lowered his head and looked at the gray light under his feet. He had a very familiar feeling, so he lowered his voice and asked, "Fellow Taoist Kai, what's the use of this formation talisman? Isn't there a teleportation formation?" Xianxia knew that Xiaohua was asking about the difference between this formation talisman and the one from Huanhua sect. She glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Although the teleportation formation talisman is a low-grade talisman, it can only move people for a short distance. Although it's called teleportation, it's actually thousands of miles away. For places like Xihuang town that are far away, they can only rely on teleportation formations. and the pressure produced by teleportation formations is enormous. If you're not a nascent soul cultivator, you won't be able to withstand it. I'm afraid that chi condensation cultivators like us will be crushed into meat paste. This formation talisman is used in conjunction with the teleportation formation. It distributes the pressure of teleportation to the formation and reduces the damage caused by teleportation. Oh, so it's like that. Xiao Hua nodded. However, with our cultivation levels in the middle stage of chi condensation, it's still difficult. Every time we teleport, we'll be dizzy for a long time, Wuxia said with some lingering fear. Is that so? Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He thought about how he felt when he used Huan Hua Sec's teleportation talisman. The teleportation talisman is already like that. Since this teleportation formation is so far away, it must be even more unbearable. Xiao Hua and Wuxia whispered to each other on the side. The other three cultivators stood on the side, looking down and not saying anything. Not long after, two old men with white hair and beards walked out from the wall. Judging from their cultivation levels, they were both in the late stage of foundation establishment. The two old men each held a pagoda-shaped magic tool in their hands. They walked to the two sides of the teleportation formation and stood steadily. Then they formed seals in their hands and sent the seals into the magic tools in their hands. The pagoda-shaped magic tools gradually lit up layer by layer. When a round bead at the top of the pagoda became completely transparent, the two old men shouted in a low voice, "Go!" The magic tools in their hands faintly pointed forward. Two beams of black and white light shot out from the two beads, shooting straight into the teleportation formation. With a burst of crackling sounds, the black and white lights in the teleportation formation flickered at the same time. A gray light cover rose, enveloping Xiao Hua and the other four people. The gray light cover flickered several times, and Xiao Hua and the other four people disappeared. At the same time that Xiao Hua and the others disappeared, a burst of enormous pressure pressed down from all directions. With a muffled pop, the formation talismans that were stuck on the five people's bodies a moment ago suddenly emitted a burst of faint gray light, enveloping the five people within. A burst of enormous pressure followed by a burst of confusion in his mind. Xiao Hua's vision darkened, and then it lit up again, followed by a burst of dizziness. Xiao Hua's figure slightly swayed, seemingly about to go limp, but he stood upright and steady. This feeling. Why is it so familiar? Xiao Hua's eyes were somewhat blurred. He stood there blankly, not moving in the slightest. Oh, this little guy is quite fierce. He actually didn't collapse on the ground. An astonished voice startled Xiao Hua awake. When he raised his head to look, he saw a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator around 50 years old, dressed in a gray Taoist robe. The middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator was standing not too far away from him, looking at him with wide eyes. Next to him, there were two chi condensation cultivators who were also looking at him in amazement. Xiao Hua suddenly woke up. When he looked to the side, he saw Wuxia and the other three 7th-level chi condensation cultivators all sitting on the ground with pale faces. They were also staring at him. These people all had such strange gazes. Xiao Hua himself felt embarrassed, but at this time, it was too late to pretend to be dizzy. Xiao Hua could only rub his nose and laugh bitterly in his heart. What are you staring blankly for? Hurry up and help these fellow Taoists out. That foundation establishment cultivator turned his head and instructed the two cultivators next to him. Maybe there will be more people coming over in a while. Yes, disciples will go over right now. The two disciples came to their senses and hurriedly stepped forward. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please help I up. Seeing the two cultivators coming over, Wuxia promptly said to Xiao Hua. Okay. Xiao Hua responded, helping Wuxia up and helping her to a praying mat not far away. Seeing Wuxia close her eyes and adjust her breathing, Xiao Hua could only stand to the side. The other three cultivators were also helped out and sat separately on the praying mats. Chapter 1441. Xiao Hua was in a small room. In the middle of the room, there was a transportation array that was much smaller than the one in Yenyuan City. There were a dozen or so praying mats scattered in the corners of the room. Inside the room, aside from the foundation establishment old man and two chi refining disciples, There were also 8 armored cultivators standing in the 4 corners of the room. Their armors were slightly different from those in Yenyuan City, but there were also many similarities. Little guy, do you have a Qian Kuan teleportation token on you? Xiao Hua was looking around when a voice sounded in his ear. N. Xiao Hua frowned and looked around. He saw the Foundation establishment old man looking at him with a smile. This old man will transmit a message to you. Don't be afraid, others can't hear it. The old man's lips seemed to be moving. Xiao Hua looked directly at him and didn't know if these words were spoken by the old man. Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and didn't know how to answer. Hee little guy, if you don't want to say it, then forget it. The old man's voice sounded again. If you don't have a Qian Kuan teleportation token, how can you stand in the transportation array with your Qi refining stage 4 cultivation? Xiao Hua really didn't know what a Qian Kuan teleportation token was and didn't understand why he only felt dizzy for a short period of time. Therefore, he couldn't answer. Just as Xiao Hua was feeling awkward, the transportation array behind the Foundation establishment old man faintly glowed with gray light. Io, why is it so lively today? Waves after waves of people just arrived. Many cultivators have come in the past few days. The Foundation establishment old man said with an unknown expression. He turned around and looked. The teleportation array flashed and then stopped. 4 cultivators, 3 men and 1 woman, were teleported over. The one in front was an early Foundation establishment stage cultivator, about 30 years old. His face showed signs of pain, but he was still standing steadily. The 3 people beside him, like Wuxia, were also paralyzed on the ground. Fellow Taoist, please. The Foundation establishment cultivator saw the Foundation establishment old man outside the transportation array and smiled. Is this Shihuang village? This is Shihuang village. I am Mo Guang from Yenyuan City. Welcome, fellow Taoist. The Foundation establishment old man returned the greeting. So it's Yenabis City's fellow Taoist Mo. It's an honor to meet you. The Foundation establishment cultivator cupped his fists and said, I'm Pu Genyuan from Flying Phoenix Ridge. Io, so it's Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu clan. You must be the current head of the Pu clan, right? I was truly disrespectful. Mo Guang's face was filled with astonishment as he once again cupped his hands. I wouldn't dare. The Pu clan is nothing compared to Yenabis City, and I's cultivation is like the light of a firefly compared to you. I don't deserve your respect. Although Pu Jinyuan's words were humble, there was a trace of pride on his face. Little ones, hurry up and help the Pu clan's disciple out of the teleportation array. Mo Guang shouted. The 2 beside him scrambled to help the female cultivator. We don't dare to trouble you 2 Dao friends. Pu Genyuan waved his hand, and the female cultivator and the other 2 disciples floated into the air and followed him out of the teleportation array. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Xiao Hua watched from the side with interest. Xianxia had already opened her eyes and slowly stood up. Fellow Taoist Kai. Can move now? Xiao Hua turned his head and asked curiously. Of course, it wasn't only Wuxia who stood up. The 3 cultivators who were teleported together with Xiao Hua had also stood up and were currently walking towards a door in the room that was emitting a faint light. I's already fine. We can go now. Wuxia nodded. Xiao Hua smiled and said, We'll listen to fellow Taoist Kai's instructions. At this moment, the 3 cultivators had already walked to the door. Among them, the slightly frail cultivator intentionally turned his head to look at Xiao Hua. When Xiao Hua noticed and looked again, the 3 people had already walked out of the room. When Xiao Hua and Wuxia walked out of the room, they discovered that they were on top of a towering cliff. Below the cliff, there was a large area of houses and pavilions, terraced fields, and even a river ferry. It was a not small town. As for the 3 cultivators just now, their figures had already flown into the air and gradually disappeared. Those 3 cultivators. Why are they also going in the direction of Flame Forest Marsh? Wuxia didn't lower her head to look at Shihuang Town, but rather looked in the direction that the 3 cultivators disappeared in. It can't be that. Something happened in Flame Forest Marsh, right? Xiao Hua asked in a low voice. Just now in the teleportation formation, did the Pu clan of Flying Phoenix Ridge come again? Moreover, their clan master also came. I don't have ears, can't I hear it myself? Xianxia rolled her eyes at him and said indifferently. I. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and secretly said in his heart, did I provoke you? Let's go. Xianxia waved her hand and flew into the air. She didn't go in the same direction as the three cultivators. Xiao Hua didn't say anything and followed closely behind. After flying for a while, Xianxia and Shi turned around and went back the way they came. Fellow Taoist Kai. You. What are you doing? Xiao Hua followed behind and couldn't help but ask. But just as he opened his mouth, on the distant cliff, Pu Jianyuan came out of the small house with a teleportation formation with 3 disciples. Seeing Xianxia and Xiao Hua fly back to the small house, he only faintly scanned them with his divine sense and flew in the direction of Flame Forest Marsh. When Xianxia saw Pu Jianyuan come out, she immediately stood respectfully in the air and quietly waited for Pu Jianyuan to fly away. Then, she slowly flew for a while and stopped in the air. At this time, Xiao Hua also understood Xianxia's meaning. He flew to Xianxia's side and said in a low voice, so the Pu clan of Flying Phoenix Ridge is also going to Flame Forest Marsh? Yes, of course, what do you think? Xianxia rolled her eyes at him unhappily. Pu Jianyuan is a foundation establishment cultivator. We don't have divine sense, so if we hide on the side, we will definitely be discovered by him. Then, she raised her head and looked in the direction of Flame Forest Marsh. After thinking for a while, she gritted her teeth and said, they are only going in the direction of Flame Forest Marsh. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to Flame Forest Marsh. Besides, Flame Forest Marsh is so big, we may not necessarily meet them. Let's go. Finished speaking, Xianxia took the lead and flew away. However, her direction was still a bit off. Not exactly the same as the direction of the people in front of her. Just as Xiao Hua flew after him, far away in Yenyuan City, outside the courtyard where the transportation formation was located, Shui followed a fat foundation establishment cultivator into the room where the transportation formation was located. Beside him were several cultivators around the 8th layer of qi condensation. They were all entering the room where the transportation formation was located. Next to the fat foundation establishment cultivator, a guard of Yenyuan City asked curiously, fellow Taoist Ling, why are you in such a hurry? I remember that fellow Taoist is scheduled to go to Shihuang Town tomorrow. Why do you want to go there today? It is already late, and fellow Taoist wants to go with 8 people at once. It is really difficult for me to explain. The fat on the fat cultivator's face trembled. He clapped his hands and secretly stuffed a few high-grade spirit stones into the guard's hands. He smiled and said, I have no choice. It is all because of the rush. If I can go a day earlier, then I will go a day earlier. The guard waved his hand and received the spirit stones. He smiled and said, fellow Taoist Ling is a frequent visitor of my Yenyuan city. Even the city lord has seen fellow Taoist Ling more than once. How can we dare to neglect you? It is just that we need to talk to the elder a bit more. These days, there are really too many cultivators going to Shihuang Town. These days? Which cultivators went there? Are there any that I know? The fat cultivator's eyes turned and he asked with a smile. They are all unknown cultivators. Even if I can't remember their names, I am sure that fellow Taoist Ling wouldn't know them either. The guard smiled and didn't say the names of the people who were going to be transported. While they were talking, they had already arrived at the place where Xiao Hua and the others were transported. Fellow Taoist Ling, please wait a moment. I will ask the elder to come over. The guard cupped his hands and left. Shui whispered, Uncle, I'm afraid there are some problems. Why did so many people go to Shihuang Town? Could it be? Shui. The fat cultivator glared at Shui and said in a low voice, the more people there are, the more it proves that the matter is true. Otherwise, Uncle wouldn't have arrived today in advance. The earlier we go, the earlier we have a sliver of opportunity. Ling Zhengyi, if you don't know your Misty Mountain, why are you going to Shihuang Town? A voice rang out. It was precisely the 2 late-stage foundation establishment cultivators who were controlling the transportation formation. Greetings, fellow Taoist Bai and fellow Taoist Liao. Ling Zhengyi cupped his hands and said, I went to Shihuang Town to visit an old friend. Because I was afraid that he would go wandering, I was in a hurry to go this time. One cultivator looked at the other and laughed. Do you believe Fatty Ling's words? That cultivator glanced at Ling Zhengyi and laughed. You can't believe even 1 out of 10 of his words. I don't think you can believe even half a word. Haha, even if you don't believe it, how can we not let him go to Shihuang town? That cultivator laughed loudly and raised his hand. Fellow Taoist Ling, please. Ling Zhangyi cupped his hands towards the 2 people and led Xue Xue and 3 others into the transportation formation. Following the flicker of gray light within the transportation formation, the 4 people's figures disappeared. Outside Shihuang town, in the already dark sky, Xiaohua flew with Kai Wuxia for a while and said in a low voice, Fellow Taoist Kai, I have something to ask. What is it? In the darkness, Kai Wuxia said with a smile at the corner of her mouth. What's a universe-shifting token? Universe-shifting token? Kai Wuxia stared blankly. Obviously, this question wasn't what she thought. Doesn't fellow Taoist Xiao have this thing on him? Why are you still asking about I thought fellow Taoist was going to ask why we didn't directly go to Blazing Forest Marsh. Even if fellow Taoist Kai didn't lead me, I definitely wouldn't directly go to Blazing Forest Marsh. What's there to ask about this? Xiaohua said with a smile. It's just that. I don't quite understand. Why did fellow Taoist and that Foundation Establishment senior from before all say that I have a universe-shifting token on me? Fellow Taoist Xiao really doesn't have one? At this time, astonishment appeared in Kai Wuxia's eyes. I thought fellow Taoist was hiding it. However, since fellow Taoist doesn't have a universe-shifting token, why didn't you feel dizzy like I? Why didn't you collapse on the ground? Fellow Taoist Kai, after talking for so long, what exactly is a universe-shifting token? Xiaohua asked with a bitter smile. Kai Wuxia lowered her head and looked, then pointed with her finger. Today we'll rest here. After we land, I'll tell you. Chapter 1442. Previously, didn't fellow Taoist Xiao ask about the formation talisman used for transportation? It's used in conjunction with transportation formations. Every transportation formation has its own special formation talisman, and they can't be replaced. Outside of this formation talisman, there's another special item. This item is the Universe Transference Token. The Universe Transference Token is a formation talisman? No, the Universe Transference Token isn't a formation talisman, nor is it a spirit talisman. It might be a magic tool, or it might be a magic treasure. However, as for what it is, only a few people know. Kai Wuxia sat cross-legged on a blue stone under the moonlight, and said very mysteriously, because this Universe Transference Token came from the distant past, and the refining method has long been lost. Even the Universe Transference Token's material is unknown now. How is it so powerful? Xiaohua also sat cross-legged across from Kai Wuxia, and he cried out involuntarily. Powerful? Fellow Taoist Zhao's understanding is somewhat wrong. Kai Wuxia covered her mouth and laughed. That Universe Transference Token admittedly came from the distant past, but this item can only be used for transportation, especially long-distance transportation. When used in conjunction with a formation talisman, it can reduce the discomfort of the person being transported. Or in some transportation formations, it can also be used alone to reduce the pressure during transportation. Presumably that Foundation Establishment Senior saw that you, a 4th-level Qi condensation cultivator, could actually stand steadily in the transportation formation, so he asked you this. That's right. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you still haven't told I. Forget it. I'll just pretend I didn't ask anything. Halfway through her words, Kai Wuxia changed the topic and said self-mockingly, I hurriedly went to reserve a transportation formation when I was free, but a certain person actually minded his own business, and even knew some female cultivators. Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he finally understood the subtlety of Kai Wuxia's attitude today. But, fellow Taoist Kai, and Li Zongbao. The more Xiao Hua thought, the more afraid he became, because Li Zongbao was a Foundation Establishment senior. When Li Zongbao left, he gave him 2 message talismans. That thought, as an outsider, how could Xiao Hua not see it? And Kai Wuxia was actually angry because he knew Xue Xue. What should he do? Thinking of Li Zongbao's flying sword, Xiao Hua shuddered. That Fellow Taoist Kai, I only met Shui by chance. Is she a loose cultivator, or a cultivator's family, or perhaps a cultivator's sect? I don't know anything. The more Xiaohua spoke, the more he stuttered. In the end, he didn't even know what he was saying. Fellow Taoist Kai. This poor Taoist is going to cultivate. Since we want to avoid them, we should hide here for a while. After saying this, Xiaohua's body flashed and he flew into the cave behind him. Why is this fellow speaking incoherently today? Wuxia looked at Xiaohua phase back in a very strange manner as she thought to herself. Then, he raised his head to look at the gradually rising full moon and muttered, Alas, I hope that we will be able to stay together for 1,000 miles. I wonder, how is he doing now? Presumably, for him to enter the foundation establishment stage at such a young age, any sect would pay attention to him. He will definitely be nurtured by his sect, and on the road of cultivation. His future will be limitless, and the great Tao will be within reach. As for me, compared to him, I am only a village woman. Why should I delay him? Wuxia's eyes were somewhat blurred as she looked up at the bright moon in the sky. If there is true love in one's heart, even if endless years pass, one won't necessarily be lonely. But without me by his side, will he remember me? For a moment, Wuxia's emotions were jumbled up, and it was difficult to sort them out. Under the hazy moonlight, she looked around in self-pity, and didn't have the slightest thought of cultivating. Inside the cave, Xiaohua calmed his heart and took out the Heavenly Law's embodiment technique from the space, and carefully looked through it. Xiaohua hadn't seen cultivation techniques after the 5th layer of qi refining, so he could only pick up the 1st to 4th layer to carefully look through them. After carefully looking through them, Xiaohua couldn't help but be overjoyed. From the cultivation techniques records in Cultivation, this Heavenly Law's embodiment technique seemed to be comparable to Shang Huaming's cultivation technique, but in some aspects, it was more extensive, and he felt that it was more suitable for male cultivators. And comparing it with raising fire to the heavens, he could almost be sure that this Heavenly Law's embodiment technique was definitely of a higher level than raising fire to the heavens. No matter whether it was the details of the cultivation technique or the method of refining the meridians, they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. What made Xiaohua the most happy was the Heavenly Law's embodiment technique. At the end of every layer, there would be an appendix of basic cultivation techniques that could be practiced and used at that layer of cultivation. What Heaven's Eye technique, what object controlling technique, they were all included. Strange. After Xiaohua's joy, he felt a little strange again. If it was a coarse cultivation technique like raising fire to the heavens that was exchanged for some 100-year-old child mother spirit fruit, I could still believe it. But this is actually comparable to Shang Huaming's complete cultivation technique. How could he be willing to take it out? It's really inconceivable. What's the value of this cultivation technique? And what's the value of a 100-year-old child mother spirit fruit? If it weren't for the fact that this young master's child mother spirit fruit was old enough, I'm afraid that cultivator would have suffered a huge loss. Then should I change my cultivation technique now? Or should I continue cultivating raising fire to the heavens? Xiaohua was a little hesitant. After thinking for a while, he opened Heavenly Law's embodiment technique again and slowly read through the rest of the cultivation technique bit by bit. Soon after, he closed his eyes and carefully pondered. The 12 layers of qi refining are divided into low-level, mid-level, and high-level. But from the Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, it seems that the 4 layers in the middle of each level are very closely related. And between each level, there seems to be a bottleneck, or a comprehension of the realm. If I want to change my cultivation technique, it's best to finish cultivating the 4 low-level layers and properly consolidate the low-level realm before cultivating a new cultivation technique. I haven't seen the other cultivation techniques before. It seems, this Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, when it's at the foundation establishment stage, it seems to be somewhat unfinished. Could it be, this cultivation technique still has a part for the foundation establishment stage? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's heart suddenly heated up, and he inwardly said, if I can get the other part of this Heavenly Law's embodiment technique into my hands, how great would that be? Soon after, Xiaohua covered his mouth and laughed. This person, he's always unsatisfied. Before today, he was still thinking about how to find a cultivation technique for the 6th layer of qi refining. Now that he's gotten a cultivation technique for before the foundation establishment stage, he's thinking about the foundation establishment stage. I'd better save it and finish cultivating this 12th layer of qi refining first. I'm not Li Zongbao. Maybe I won't be able to cultivate to the foundation establishment stage in this lifetime. Li Zongbao. Thinking of Li Zongbao, Xiao Hua's heart trembled again, and he inwardly said, looking at Wuxia's intentions, she can't be thinking of shifting her affections to someone else, right? It seems that after the Flame Forest Mountain Marsh, I'd better have less contact with her. As for that Luyang Kai clan, it'd be better if I didn't go there. Soon after, Xiao Hua calmed his mind and flipped the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique to the 8th and 11th layers of qi refining. At the end of the 8th layer, the cultivation technique introduced a method of using spirit stones to cultivate. This was something that Xiao Hua learned from other cultivators, and he had long been drooling over it. He didn't expect to see it today in the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique. And at the end of the 11th layer of qi refining, there was also a mnemonic chant. The book clearly stated that this mnemonic chant could stimulate the growth of divine sense in preparation for the 12th layer of qi refining to produce incomparably powerful divine sense. Xiao Hua first looked at the method of using spirit stones to cultivate. This cultivation technique didn't seem to be difficult. It only required one to use the acupoints on both hands to absorb the spiritual energy from spirit stones into one's body. It was essentially the same as when cultivating basic cultivation techniques, drawing spiritual energy into one's body. However, the method was much more ingenious. After reading this, Xiao Hua somewhat impatiently flipped to the very end of the book and carefully comprehended the mnemonic chant that could stimulate the growth of divine sense. After reading it, Xiao Hua actually felt that it was somewhat familiar. This mnemonic chant was actually similar to the nameless mnemonic chant that he practiced every day. Could it be that nameless mnemonic chant can actually stimulate the growth of divine sense? Xiao Hua frowned as he thought. But, if it's also stimulating the growth of divine sense, this Heavenly Laws embodiment technique's mnemonic chant seems to have something even more mysterious. Could it be that this thing is the essence of the mnemonic chant? Then, doesn't that mean that the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique's mnemonic chant is of a higher level than the nameless mnemonic chant? The generated divine sense is even more powerful? But immediately after, Xiao Hua was somewhat hesitant. This cultivation technique was easy to talk about. After he finished cultivating the 4th layer of qi refining, he could use the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique to continue cultivating from the middle layer of qi refining. However, this nameless mnemonic chant was something that he had comprehended long ago and had been cultivating all along. And he didn't know whether or not the perception of divine sense appeared because of this nameless mnemonic chant. If he changed the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique's mnemonic chant, would this perception disappear? Moreover, the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique's mnemonic chant can only be comprehended at the 11th layer of qi refining. Could he practice it now? Divine sense is the foundation of a foundation establishment cultivator. If he was careless and cultivated it incorrectly, not to mention whether or not he could produce divine sense, even if he was weaker than others in the future, wouldn't he be letting down the results of his cultivation that he had painstakingly cultivated? Forget it, cultivation techniques aren't necessarily good only if they're of a high level. It's best if they're suitable for me. After thinking for a long time, Xiao Hua finally came to a decision. Immediately after, Xiao Hua took out 2 pieces of top-quality fire attribute spirit stones from his space. He silently recited the cultivation technique that used spirit stones to cultivate in his heart for a while. According to the cultivation technique, he slowly absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from the spirit stones. A wave of slightly hot spiritual energy quickly followed Xiao Hua's circulation and entered his meridians from his hand. This seems somewhat familiar. Xiao Hua thought very strangely. After holding the spirit stones in his hand and cultivating for a while, Xiao Hua took out a clean lotus pill and put it into his mouth. The cool medicinal power of the clean lotus pill fused with the hot spiritual energy of the spirit stones, causing the meridians of his entire body to feel incomparably comfortable. For 3 days in a row, Xiao Hua and Wuxia each went into seclusion and didn't take half a step out of the cave. On the morning of the 4th day, Wuxia sent a message and Xiao Hua came out of seclusion. In these 3 days, Xiao Hua's 2 top-quality fire attribute spirit stones didn't have much of a change. Wuxia seemed to have something on her mind. When she saw Xiao Hua fly out, She didn't take a closer look and called out to him again, flying in the direction of the Flame Forest Mountains. Chapter 1443. Because he had misgivings in his heart, Xiaohua distanced himself from Wuxia and spoke more carefully. Wuxia seemed to be thinking about something, so she didn't notice. The two of them traveled like this for more than 10 days. On this day, a fiery red streak appeared in the distant horizon. Xiaohua pointed and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Kai, is that Flame Forest Swamp?" Wuxia raised her head and looked, somewhat at a loss. "Yes, it is. I came here with my family's elders a few years ago. When I saw it for the first time, I was just as surprised as fellow Taoist." "But how did we arrive so quickly?" Wuxia asked curiously. "Quickly?" Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "We've been flying for more than 10 days. According to fellow Taoist Kai, we should have arrived." Wuxia seemed to wake up from a dream. She smiled apologetically and said, "I was a bit strange during this time. I was always absent-minded. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please don't blame me." Fellow Taoist's cultivation seems to have increased again. "I'm afraid you're about to reach the middle stage of the 4th layer of qi refining." "Not at all." Xiaohua was somewhat proud and repeatedly waved his hand. "I just entered the early stage of the 4th layer of qi refining. I'm still far from the middle stage." In fact, Xiaohua was clear that after he obtained the cultivation method of spirit stones, the amount of spiritual energy he absorbed into his body every day was more than twice as much as before. In other words, his cultivation speed was much faster now. Not only did he catch up to the speed of ordinary cultivators, he even surpassed them by a lot. Although these 20 days were extremely short, it allowed his cultivation to take a small step forward. Soon after, Xiaohua looked around and said with a smile, "We've been traveling for more than 10 days and haven't met any other cultivators. Presumably, even if they also come to Flame Forest Swamp, we won't have any disputes, right?" "Perhaps. Flame Forest Swamp is extremely large. I have a vague impression of the place fellow Taoist Xiao mentioned. It should be in the periphery of Flame Forest Swamp. Moreover, it can be considered concealed. That place shouldn't be the place Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu clan went. The other 3 fellow Taoists probably have their own matters to attend to. However, other than those cultivators, there are many other dangerous places in Flame Forest Swamp. It's better for us to be careful." "Yes, this poor Taoist knows," Xiaohua replied with a smile. Just as he was about to continue speaking, suddenly, a loud rumbling sound came from the direction of the Flame Forest Swamp. The entire ground shook up and down. Although Xiaohua and Wuxia were in midair, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that was rapidly surging towards the Flame Forest Swamp caused their figures to sway from side to side. Wuxia's expression changed drastically as she shouted, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, let's quickly land on the ground." At this time, a clear voice sounded in Xiaohua's heart. "Mother, where are you, a mother?" "Ah?" Xiaohua's heart felt as if it was being hammered. Previously, he had also heard these words, but he only thought that he had misheard. Now that he heard it again, and it was actually somewhat clear, how could he not be extremely astonished? Whoosh, the heaven and earth spiritual qi formed a hurricane that lifted Xiaohua's body high up into the air. He almost lost his balance, and at the same time, the sound disappeared without a trace. Xiaohua's figure swayed left and right along with the hurricane, but this couldn't compare to the shock in his heart. "Mother? Who is it? This voice. Who is it?" A few ghost legends inexplicably rushed into Xiaohua's heart. "Fellow Taoist Xiao. Fellow Taoist Xiao." Wuxia's voice came from below. "Sigh," Xiaohua sighed deeply. His hand formed a seal, and his figure turned rapidly. Like a vertical awl, he rushed through the airflow and plunged into the lush mountain forest below him. In the mountain forest, Wuxia's beautiful face turned pale. Seeing Xiaohua descend, she welcomed him and said with concern, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, what are you thinking about? This kind of heavenly phenomenon is not something a human can resist. How can you be absent-minded at such a crucial moment?" "Absent-minded?" Xiaohua smiled bitterly. How could he say that voice that came from his heart? After all, he couldn't explain it clearly. And the one who was truly absent-minded was probably Xianxia herself. However, fellow Taoist Zhao's flying technique is indeed exceptional. Just by relying on a flying talisman, you can freely move unhindered in this kind of heavenly phenomenon. This control of magic power and the use of spells is truly not something I can reach, Xianxia said with a bit of envy. Xiaohua waved his hand, looked into the distance, and said with a smile, "No matter how powerful I am, I'm only at the 4th level of qi refining. It's impossible for me to be a match for a foundation establishment senior. In front of an old senior, I simply don't have the power to fight back." Xiaoxia's eyes moved, but she looked into the distance and muttered, "This kind of heaven-collapsing and earth-rending earthquake is very rare. I don't know what happened in Flame Forest Marsh. Is there even a need to say it? Naturally, it's something that Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu clan and the 3 cultivators who teleported here with us want to do," Xiaohua said resolutely. But soon after, he hesitated again. "That Pu clan's clanmaster is a foundation establishment senior. Should we still go forward?" Xianxia also hesitated for a moment. Soon after, she clenched her teeth and said, "Go, of course we have to go. We're already so close, how can we not go? Besides, even the Pu clan's clanmaster came, maybe there's something good inside. If we run into it, we might even be able to fish up some benefits." "Let's go," Xianxia waved her hand. Her figure flew up, and she flew towards that line of fiery red in the distance. Ha! Why did this girl change her personality? Xiaohua was stunned at first. Previously, Xianxia always thought about everything she encountered and had a lot of misgivings. This time, it was obvious that there was a lot of danger ahead, but why did she brace herself and charge forward? It seemed like she was even more of a rogue cultivator than a rogue cultivator like himself. Just as Xiaohua and Xianxia sped up their flight towards the Flame Forest Swamp, in the direction where the loud sound came from, there was a depression in the Flame Forest Swamp. In the depression, there were more than 10 cultivators wearing 2 different kinds of clothing. They held different kinds of talismans and magic tools in their hands. They were currently surrounding a 10-zhang-wide formation in the middle of the depression. Blood was seeping out of their 7 orifices. Their blood-stained eyes were wide open, and they were fiercely staring at each other. They were in a stalemate. Around the formation, there were more than 10 cultivators' corpses. They were bleeding from their 7 orifices and collapsed on the ground. These dozens of cultivators' clothing were also divided into 2 kinds, and their numbers were roughly equal. On both sides of the formation, there were 2 early-stage foundation establishment cultivators. They each held a magic tool in their hands, and they were coldly looking at each other. Of these 2 foundation establishment cultivators, one was Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu Genyuan, and the other was Ling Zhengyi, who teleported here with Xue Xue. Xue Xue was bleeding from her 7 orifices. She had a dull expression as she sat next to Ling Zhengyi. "Pu Genyuan, you're despicable." Ling Zhengyi's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he said coldly, "Our 2 clans made a vow to break this formation together. But why did you go back on your word when the formation was about to break? If you didn't change sides, how could this formation have backfired? How could more than half of our disciples be injured?" "Hee, Ling Zhengyi, don't talk to this old man about righteousness." Pu Genyuan also sneered, "Didn't your Ling clan's disciples also have evil intentions? If they didn't use all their strength to mobilize the formation to defend against the enemy, how could they have fallen to such a state?" "Ha ha ha." Ling Zhengyi raised his head and laughed. "According to what you said, my Ling clan's disciples should have stood there obediently and been destroyed by your Flying Phoenix Ridge? That's really preposterous. Forget it. What's the point of arguing? Let's see who's the real deal." Pu Genyuan waved his hand, and a palm of lightning struck towards Ling Zhengyi. "Good." Ling Zhengyi snorted and waved his hand, and a blue light spilled out from his hand. It was a net-like magic tool that flew out and blocked the palm of lightning. The palm of lightning crackled, but the lightning was all absorbed by the net-like magic tool, and not a single bit of it came out. "Old thief Pu, your cultivation is only a..." Ling Zhengyi roared, and the magic power in his hand surged. A bright light flew out and spun in the air, and smashed towards Pu Genyuan's head. "It's just a replica of the Immortal binding ring. What's there to be proud of?" Pu Genyuan also threw out the flat Dharma treasure in his hand. A ray of light that looked like a white cloud appeared above Pu Genyuan, holding the Immortal binding ring in the air. It floated up and down a few times, unable to fall down. How is it? This old man. Before Pu Genyuan could finish his sentence, a dazzling golden light shot up into the sky above the basin. In the blink of an eye, it flew in front of the two of them. From the golden light, a huge spider appeared. The spider stopped in the air, and from its abdomen, two thin golden threads suddenly shot out, flying towards the two magic tools that were fighting in the air. The golden threads were also strange. They flew to the two magic tools and quickly wrapped around them. At the same time, the two magic tools immediately lost contact with Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan. Golden cover spider. Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan were shocked. They couldn't care less about fighting. They flew away and formed seals in their hands, wanting to attack the golden spider. But just as they flew up, the gold-covered spider had already retracted its spider silk. It followed the golden brilliance and suddenly flew into the sky above the basin. Where do you think you're going? Ling Zhengyi patted his hand and took out a flying sword from his storage bag. He channeled his magic power, and the flying sword pierced towards the golden cover spider like lightning. With a kacha sound, the flying sword pierced the back of the golden cover spider. There was a burst of sparks, but the golden cover spider didn't suffer any damage and continued to fly back. Which fellow cultivator is watching the battle from the side? Seeing that Ling Zhengyi's flying sword was ineffective, Pu Genyuan knew that something was wrong. He looked at the equally shocked disciples around him, and he chased after the golden cover spider and flew towards the high mountain above the basin. Haha, I said that there must be something strange going on. The Pu family of Flying Phoenix Ridge and the Ling family of Mist Mountain came one after another. There must be something strange going on. This old man guessed it right. A loud and clear voice came from the sky. Chapter 1444. When the crowd in the basin heard this loud voice, they all raised their heads. A figure flew down from a nearby mountain and landed directly on the back of the gold-covered spider. Before the crowd could see clearly, a powerful pressure came from that person's body, causing all the Qi refinement cultivators to be unable to breathe under the pressure. A Foundation Establishment middle stage cultivator? Everyone was shocked, but at the same time, they understood. I greet fellow Taoist Mo. Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan heard the voice and stopped in mid-air. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with bitterness, and then bowed. The gold-covered spider was hovering in mid-air, its golden spider silk still wrapped around the two immortal treasures. The two immortal treasures were no longer struggling as before. They floated quietly beside the gold-covered spider. The person standing on the back of the gold-covered spider was Mo Guang, the Foundation Establishment stage elder who had set up the transportation portal in Shihuang Town. Fellow Taoist Ling, fellow Taoist Pu, we haven't seen each other for just over 10 days. Why have you become enemies? Mo Guang retracted his aura and said with a smile. This. Ling Zhengyi sighed, looked at Pu Genyuan, and didn't say anything else. Mo Guang lowered his head and looked at the array below the basin. He smiled and said, I want to see what's under the array. Unfortunately, the two of you aren't of the same mind. Before the array is broken, there's already an internal conflict. This kind of behavior is really unwise. Hearing this, Ling Zhengyi glanced coldly at Pu Genyuan, his eyes filled with hatred. That's right, the formation of the Flame Forest Swamp was only recorded in the ancient records of the Ling family of the Dense Fog Mountains. Ling Zhengyi was currently organizing his own disciples, wanting to rely on his own strength to break the formation. However, he didn't expect that there would be other cultivators rushing towards Shihuang Town. Left with no choice, Ling Zhengyi could only lead the disciples he had gathered at the last minute and rush over. Fortunately, Ling Zhengyi had already sent many disciples over beforehand. Even if they encountered the Pu family of the Soaring Phoenix Ridge, their strength was not inferior. Since the Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu family had also discovered this array and seemed to have gathered their strength, Ling Zhengyi could only sit down with Pu Genyuan and discuss how to break the array together. Moreover, with the disciples of the two families working together, the chances of breaking the array would increase. Unfortunately, just when there was hope of breaking the seal, Pu Genyuan suddenly turned on them. Not only did the array backfire, a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual qi burst out from the array, killing more than half of the disciples of the two families. What made Ling Zhengyi even angrier was that such a huge commotion in Flame Forest Marsh would definitely attract the attention of other cultivators, and the secret of Flame Forest Marsh would be exposed. Let's not talk about other people for now. How could Yenyuan City not know of Mo Guang's arrival? Fellow Taoists? Since it's come to this point, you still don't want to tell I the reason? Mo Guang wasn't in a hurry and asked with a smile. Please explain. Fellow Taoist Ling. Pu Genyuan cupped his hands and said, Go ahead. Fellow Taoist Pu. After all, fellow Taoist Pu came first. Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan tried to push each other around. Hee. Fellow Taoist Pu should say it. Mo Guang waved his hand and cast a spell on the gold-covered spider's body. The gold-covered spider's body flashed with brilliance, and the spider silk that was wrapped around the two magic tools quickly shrank. Mo Guang took out a spirit storage pouch from his waist and put away the gold-covered spider. When Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan saw this, they were overjoyed. With a sweep of their spiritual will, they retrieved the magic tools and looked at each other. Pu Genyuan smiled and said, Since that's the case, I will say it first. Fellow Taoist Pu, please. Ling Zhengyi raised his hand and said expressionlessly, I'll let fellow Taoist Mo know that 10 days ago, my Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu clan received a message from Xianxia School, offering a reward of Fire Essence Flame Crystals. As long as we can bring out enough Fire Essence Flame Crystals, Xianxia School will provide some secret techniques for us to choose from. Fellow Taoist Mo should know that these secret techniques are what our cultivation families desire. Naturally, I would want to find some Fire Essence Flame Crystals. Of course, if the Fire Essence Flame Crystals were easy to find, Xianxia School wouldn't need to offer a reward to our cultivation families. Just when I was at my wit's end, I occasionally remembered some ancient books that I read when I was young. There seemed to be some records of this. Fellow Taoist Pu went to look through the ancient books and found information about the Fire Essence Flame Crystals? Mo Guang asked with a strange expression. Yes, that's exactly it. Pu Genyuan smiled apologetically and said, Although my Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu clan has many ancient books, I have only seen a few. After flipping through them, I naturally knew. So, there are Fire Essence Flame Crystals under this magic array? Mo Guang's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but look at the magic array on the ground. He turned his head and asked, Fellow Taoist Ling, is what fellow Taoist Pu said correct? Yes, what fellow Taoist Pu said is the same as what I know. Ling Zhengyi's face was a little cold. He nodded and said, The difference is that I have always known about this magic array. It's just that I don't have the ability to use the Fire Essence Flame Crystals. If I can use this Fire Essence Flame Crystal to exchange for some secret spells of Xianxia School, I will naturally be happy. Actually, as long as you all tell the location of this Fire Essence Flame Crystal to Xianxia School, wouldn't you all similarly get the reward? Mo Guang's eyes flashed slightly as he asked again. Fellow Taoist Mo must be joking. Pu Genyuan said with a smile. Who knows if there are Fire Essence Flame Crystals under this magic array? If there aren't, wouldn't it be a joke? Mo Guang pursed his lips. How could he not know what Pu Genyuan and Ling Zhengyi were thinking? Probably nobody knew how many Fire Essence Flame Crystals there were under the magic array, right? However, he didn't ask too much. He only thought for a while and asked again, Then your two clans' array-breaking spells are the same? Yes, that's right. Otherwise, we wouldn't have joined hands. Ling Zhengyi nodded and said, Since more than half of your disciples have already been lost, this magic array, I'm afraid there's no hope of breaking it. Mo Guang looked at the disciples on the ground and said with a smile, Why don't I lend you a hand too? Ling Zhengyi smiled bitterly. Wasn't Mo Guang waiting here for this opportunity? If not for the fact that the Ling and Pu clans had array-breaking spells, Mo Guang would have left the two clans in the dust. If Yanabis City can join in, this magic array will naturally be easy to break. Pu Genyuan said with a smile. However, how will the Fire Essence Flame Crystals be divided? Mo Guang looked at Pu Genyuan with a smile and said, Fellow Taoist Pu, it's I who helped you, not Yanabis City. When Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan heard this, their eyes lit up. Just now, the two of them were depressed because they didn't understand the meaning behind Mo Guang's words. Ling Zhengyi's eyes turned and he smiled apologetically. Since fellow Taoist Mo helped us, I think that fellow Taoist Mo can get 30%. The remaining 70% will be divided equally between our Ling and Pu clans. How about that? When Pu Genyuan heard this, his face was also filled with joy. This way of dividing was indeed beneficial to them. Then he looked at Mo Guang nervously. Mo Guang seemed to be deep in thought. After a while he nodded slowly. Both of your clans will provide array-breaking spells. I will only use my hand to break the array. When the time comes, it will be very fair. Great! Pu Genyuan and Ling Zhengyi clapped their hands and smiled. I will instruct the disciples to quickly set up the array. Later, we will need fellow Taoist Mo's help to break this array. I will wait for your orders. Mo Guang nodded and said. Then, Pu Genyuan and Ling Zhengyi organized the disciples of their respective clans and stood on both sides of the array. These disciples had survived the backlash of the array, and were all very strong cultivators. Just now, they had rested and consumed some pills. By now, they had already recovered by more than half. Not long after, everyone was in position. These disciples were holding an old yellow talisman in their hands. Although they were disciples of the two clans, the size and style of the yellow talisman were the same. Looking at these disciples, although they were a little scattered, they were arranged in a picturesque manner. Fellow Taoist Mo, we will begin to break the array again. When I call for you, you just need to pour your spiritual energy into the array. Pu Genyuan and Ling Zhengyi stood on both sides of the array and shouted loudly. I will listen to fellow Taoist Ling's orders. Mo Guang nodded and smiled. At the same time, he began to circulate his spiritual energy, ready to go. Pu Genyuan and Ling Zhengyi looked at each other. Ling Zhengyi said, Fellow Taoist Pu, this is not a small matter. It is our last chance. Fellow Taoist, please don't have any other ideas. Sigh. Fellow Taoist Mo is right above us. Fellow Taoist Mo, do you think I dare to do anything? Pu Genyuan also smiled bitterly. Just now, he thought that victory was in his grasp, so he burned the bridge after crossing the river. He did not expect to go for wool and come home shorn. This time, he naturally did not dare to do anything. Okay, disciples of both clans, get ready. Ling Zhengyi did not hesitate and shouted. Listen to family head Ling's orders. Pu Genyuan immediately echoed. The disciples of both clans obeyed the order and poured their spiritual energy into the yellow talisman in their hands. When the yellow talisman received the spiritual energy, it immediately emitted a faint fiery red brilliance. The brilliance gradually rose up, like a burning flame. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the faces of the disciples of both clans were pale. Their foreheads and temples were dripping with sweat. Activate the yellow talisman. Ling Zhengyi saw that the time was right and shouted sternly. When the disciples of both clans heard this, they waved their hands at the same time. The yellow talisman flew into the air. The dozens of fiery red flames first drifted in the air. Then, as if there was a pulling force, they gradually gathered together and gradually formed two huge fireballs on both sides of the array. Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan also clapped their hands and took out an almost identical hook from their storage bags. The hook was also fiery red in color. Ling Zhengyi channeled his spiritual energy and the hook made a sizzling sound and bloomed with a fiery red brilliance. Ling Zhengyi spat a mouthful of blood on the hook. The hook made a hong sound and actually ignited. Looking at the opposite side, Pu Genyuan on the other side of the array was doing the same thing. Ling Zhengyi flew into the air and raised the hook. Then, he waved his hands and a spell was cast on the hook. As the spell was cast, the two hooks above the array gradually changed. Ling Zhengyi's hook gradually became round, and Pu Genyuan's hook gradually became wider. The two hooks were in the shape of a sun and a moon. Chapter 1445. Seeing that Pu Genyuan and Ling Zhengyi's magic treasures had turned into the shape of the sun and moon, Mo Guang frowned slightly. He didn't believe that the two of them wouldn't have any thoughts when they saw their magic treasures echoing the shape of the other's magic treasures. Since the two magic treasures could open the array and even work together, why were the two magic treasures given to the two cultivation families? Today, the two families might even have a grudge because of this. Looking at Ling Zhengyi again, he glanced at Pu Genyuan's magic tool. His heart was no longer as shocked as when he saw it for the first time. After he finished his hand seals, the round hook made a buzzing sound and slowly rotated in the air. Every time it rotated, the tip of the hook would emit a circle of light. The light was like brilliant fireworks, one after another, sprinkling in the air and gradually disappearing. With a puff sound, Ling Zhengyi flew up again and spat a mouthful of life essence on the hook. The hook's brilliance suddenly expanded as if it was about to expand. At this moment, Ling Zhengyi made the chant in his hand. The hook, driven by the chant and Ling Zhengyi's divine sense, smashed into the array in the middle of the basin like a meteor. What surprised Mo Guang was that when the round hook hit the magic array on the ground, it didn't make a loud noise or destroy the magic array as he had expected. Instead, it seemed to be one with the magic array. Half of the magic array emitted a colorful light and swallowed the hook. Immediately afterward, the brilliance of the entire half of the array was like boiling water, surging into the air. As the brilliance boiled, the entire array began to slowly rotate. Fellow Pooh, are you still not going to make a move? At this time, Ling Zhengyi stood with his hands behind his back and looked coldly at Pu Jianyuan. At this time, Pu Jianyuan also finished the incantation. When he heard Ling Zhengyi's question, he opened his mouth and also spat out a mouthful of life essence. The moonlight hook also expanded and looked like Ling Zhengyi's magic tool. When the hook entered the array, it fell on the other side of the array, so the entire array boiled. As Pu Jianyuan's hook entered the array, the entire array began to rotate without using any magic power, and it rotated faster and faster. Ling Zhengyi glanced at Pu Jianyuan. Pu Jianyuan had suddenly made a move at this moment, which caused the entire array to backfire. That boiling brilliance suddenly exploded, and the two hooks were thrown out. More than half of the disciples of the two families were killed or injured. Pu Jianyuan seemed to feel Ling Zhengyi's gaze. He raised his head and glanced at Ling Zhengyi without any apology in his eyes. As the brilliance rotated, the array formed an illusory image like the sun and moon, gradually floating above the array. Disciples, do it! At the same time, Ling Zhengyi made a hand seal to send his magic power to the shadow, and at the same time, he shouted again. The disciples of the two families stood still and made the same hand seals, sending their magic power through the hand seals to the shadow that flew up. Pu Jianyuan also shouted, Fellow Mo, please! As he spoke, his hands shouted. He raised. As everyone's magic power was sent out, the illusory image became higher and higher. However, when the illusory image flew to a certain height, it quietly floated there and no longer rose. Mo Guang knew that it was time for him to contribute. He let out a loud shout, and a strange spell appeared in his hand. He sent his foundation establishment middle stage Dharma power into the shadow. Woo! There was a muffled sound, followed by silence. Looking at the array below the illusory image, the rapidly rotating brilliance seemed to have stagnated and suddenly stopped. Just as the brilliance seemed to have stopped, the illusory image in the air suddenly flew up 10 feet into the air. When the illusory figure stopped once more, it suddenly dispersed and turned into the shape of a bird that was about to fly. The bird's wings flapped up and down, as if there was a heavy object beneath it that was preventing it from flying up. However, as the bird flapped its wings, the bird actually flew up a few feet. Looking at the array, the stagnant brilliance also seemed to have been pulled up. Gradually, a trace of hot air seeped out from the bottom of the brilliance. Seeing that they were about to succeed, Mo Guang, Ling Zhengyi, and Pu Jianyuan's eyes were filled with joy. The true qi in their meridians flowed rapidly, and all the magic power in their bodies was injected into the illusory image. The illusory image turned into a bird and did not disappoint, flying up a few feet. Wah! Waves of hot air rushed out again, causing the disciples of the two families to be unable to stand still. All of you move to the side first. Seeing this, Ling Zhengyi knew that these disciples' magic power had been used up and could no longer be of any use. When the remaining disciples of the Ling and Pu families heard this, they immediately flew up and hid behind. The three foundation establishment stage cultivators channeled all the magic power in their bodies, causing the illusory image to fly up another foot. However, as the illusory image rose, the light of the array below the illusory image became heavier and heavier. The illusory image was like a bottomless pit, swallowing all the magic power of the three people. Not good. Mo Guang held on for a while, and his heart thumped. He felt that something was wrong. This array was really too brilliant. 2 Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators and 1 Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator channeled all their magic power, yet they still could not do it. Under this array, was it only Fire Essence Flame Crystal? Just as Mo Guang was hesitating, a bang sound rang out, as if the string of a zither had broken. A trace of black and white suddenly appeared in the middle of the condensed light of the array. Immediately, a huge force was transmitted from the array to the illusory image of the bird. Suddenly, Mo Guang and the other 2 people's faces changed greatly. At the same time, they withdrew their hand seals and stopped channeling their magic power. Without the support of their magic power, the bird immediately retracted its wings and turned into an illusory image again, rapidly descending towards the array. As the illusory image descended, the light of the array began to rotate again. However, at this time, the trace of black and white was exceptionally bright. Sigh, what a waste of effort. Xianxia flew forward and whispered, "Fellow Taoist Mo, do you still have any energy left?" Mo Guang stared at the trace of black and white above the array and frowned slightly. He said, "I feel that this is a little strange." "Eh? What do you mean by that?" Pu Genyuan also flew forward and asked curiously, "Fellow Taoists, don't you think that the place where the Fire Essence Flame Crystal is hidden is too heavily guarded?" Pu Genyuan glanced at Xianxia and smiled. Perhaps fellow Taoist Mo does not know this, but this Fire Essence Flame Crystal was a spirit stone used by my cultivator ancestors in ancient times to speed up their cultivation. Especially for cultivators with fire-type constitutions, it is even better than the Foundation Establishment pill. There is such a saying? Mo Guang was slightly stunned. I know the uniqueness of this Fire Essence Flame Crystal. The fire-type spiritual energy contained in it is more abundant than ordinary top-grade spirit stones. However, I have never heard of this Fire Essence Flame Crystal being used for cultivation. Let fellow Taoist Mo know. Xianxia smiled and said, "In the records of my Ling family, in ancient times, the cultivator ancestors all had heavenly bodies. The meridians in their bodies were naturally formed and incomparably strong. Although the fire-type spiritual energy in this Fire Essence Flame Crystal is fierce, it does not cause much damage to their meridians. Using it to improve cultivation, especially for cultivators with fire-type constitutions, is definitely a gift from the heavens. But today, the meridians of our cultivators are more than 1,000,000 times weaker. Not to mention that the Fire Essence Flame Crystal has disappeared for countless years. Even if there is a piece, who would dare to directly absorb the fire-type spiritual energy in the Fire Essence Flame Crystal into their body? That is purely seeking death. Then why is Xuanyan cult looking for this Fire Essence Flame Crystal?" Mo Guang asked curiously. But at this moment, without waiting for Xianxia and Pu Genyuan to answer, they heard a series of crisp, bang bang bang, sounds from the array above the basin, as if someone was playing a moving pipa. Not good. There is a change in the array. Mo Guang's cultivation was still much higher than the 2 of them. With a sweep of his spiritual will, he saw that the brilliance of the array was becoming more and more black and white. Quick, both fellow Taoists, quickly retrieve the magic weapon that is used to break the array. Mo Guang hurriedly shouted. Yes, fellow Taoist Mo. Please wait a moment. Xianxia and Pu Genyuan responded at the same time, and simultaneously formed hand seals to hit the array. Unfortunately, the hand seals were like clay oxen entering the sea, and did not have any effect. Xianxia's face turned pale and he shouted, "Not good, fellow Taoist Mo, I's magic weapon is not listening to my orders." I's is the same. Pu Genyuan also shouted. Could it be that the array has been broken? Pu Genyuan anxiously said with joy. With a loud bang, a protrusion suddenly rushed out from the array. That protrusion seemed to be something flying out from under the array, and it stretched the restriction of the array extremely long. The array was very tenacious, and the protrusion immediately fell down. But in a hurry, with another bang, the protrusion continued to appear. What is going on? Fellow Taoists, what can you tell me? Mo Guang's heart trembled, and he asked nervously. I don't know either. Xianxia and Pu Genyuan both shook their heads, but they looked at each other with inexplicable joy in their eyes. With a tearing sound, like silk being torn by a strong force, the protrusion rushed out again, and it hit the intersection of the black and white. Immediately, a thin crack appeared on the array, and from that crack, not only a fiery red brilliance and a hot aura, but also a beast arm that was as thick as a tree and several feet long with fur on it. Quick, this array! Seeing this, Mo Guang turned pale with fright, and his body immediately straightened up, wanting to escape into the distance. But at this moment, as the beast arm stretched out from the formation, a huge fire ape covered in long fiery red fur, with flames several feet long, jumped out from the torn formation. The fire ape had already jumped out, and under its body, endless magma flowed out along the crack of the array. The fire ape stepped on the magma and looked up at the sky. In midair, Mo Guang's body had already flown up, and in the blink of an eye, he was already several feet away. Chapter 1446. The fire ape stepped on the rolling magma and tore apart the array that even the Foundation Establishment stage cultivators couldn't break with its bare hands. Once the fire ape appeared, an unparalleled pressure was emitted from its body. In an instant, it covered the entire basin. The disciples from the two clans who had flown up in a panic earlier had already flown to the edge of the basin. Under this pressure, they were unable to resist. Without exception, they all fell from the sky and landed on the ground. Fortunately, these disciples had already exhausted their magic power. They barely managed to activate the flight talisman and flew very low. This was actually a blessing in disguise. Except for a few unlucky ones who landed on sharp mountain rocks and suffered some serious injuries, the rest were mostly fine. Along with the pressure of the fire ape, a violent, merciless and furious divine sense swept across the area, directly skipping over the Qi refinement disciples, covering the sky and covering the earth as it swept towards Mo Guang, Pu Genyuan, and Ling Zhengyi. Good heavens, golden core stage strength! Mo Guang, who was flying up, couldn't help but groan in his heart. This flying Phoenix Ridge and Fog Mountain records. What kind of things are recorded? This array actually has a 5th grade spirit beast. This is rare even in the Dawn Rain continent. But immediately, Mo Guang's heart trembled again. He had a very bad feeling. When he turned his head slightly to take a look, sure enough, Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan, who still had some fear on their faces, now had a trace of surprise on their faces. The most chilling thing to Mo Guang was that the two of them didn't flee like he did. Instead, they flew a little further away, clapped their hands, and each of them took out a gray rectangular celestial artifact from their storage bags. At first glance, it looked like a big seal. Following the big seal, the two hooks on the ground also flew up and rushed into the two big seals. Two damned ignorant men. Seeing this, how could Mo Guang not know that there was something fishy about this? But at this moment, he couldn't care less. He only wanted to quickly escape from the hands of the 5th grade fire ape. However, things did not go according to one's wishes. The fire ape, which was dozens of feet tall, scanned the area with its divine thought. Its bright red eyes, which were hidden under its long hair, revealed a joyous expression. The flames that lingered around its body swelled slightly as its body suddenly rose. Like a fireball, it flew towards Ling Zhengyi and the rest. Before they could even get close, Ling Zhengyi took out the magical artifacts. Roar! The fire ape lifted its head and roared towards the sky. The long fur and flames around its body danced. However, there was a trace of fear in its eyes. Seeing that Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan were about to activate their magical tools, the fire ape swung its arms, and two huge fireballs comparable to top-grade fireball talismans flew towards the two of them. Although Ling Zhengyi was not afraid of the fireball talisman, they did not dare to be careless. Their hands formed a seal, and an ice seal technique shot towards the fireball. A human-like expression of ridicule actually appeared in the fire ape's eyes. Sure enough, when the icebound art struck the fireball, it only extinguished the flames on the fireball, and the fireball still whistled as it charged towards the two of them. Rumble! The two loud sounds combined into one. That power was several times higher than Xiao Hua's fireball talisman. It directly blasted the two early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators away. How could they still have the chance to activate their magical tools? The fire ape took advantage of this opportunity and flew through the exploding flames, chasing after Mo Guang. Although Mo Guang had already flown away, his divine sense had always been paying attention to his back. When he saw that the fire ape had actually blasted Ling Zhengyi and Pu Genyuan away instead of directly killing them, his heart turned cold. When the fire ape used its divine sense to lock onto him and saw that the fire ape was much faster than him, Mo Guang sighed lightly and stopped flying. He patted his hand and took out a small flying sword from his storage bag. He turned around and stood still in midair. The fire ape flew extremely fast. In a dozen breaths, it arrived in front of Mo Guang. Looking at the extremely long trail of flames behind the fire ape, Mo Guang's pupils shrank slightly. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of life essence onto the flying sword in his hand. That flying sword suddenly swelled as if it had gained intelligence. The sword light shrunk and contracted a few times, then flew out of Mo Guang's hand and very nimbly stabbed towards the fire ape. However, the fire ape's flying speed did not slow down in the slightest. When it saw the flying sword stabbing towards it, it did not dodge at all. It only raised its hand slightly and grabbed with its furry claws. The flying sword actually flew towards its hand. Mo Guang was shocked when he saw this and immediately controlled the flying sword to dodge. However, the fire ape's hand seemed to have an endless suction force. The flying sword light shrunk and contracted rapidly, but it was unable to dodge. In the blink of an eye, the flying sword fell into the fire ape's hand. Before Mo Guang could take a closer look, a ball of true samadhi fire appeared from the fire ape's hand and directly melted the entire flying sword. Pooh! A mouthful of blood spurted out from Mo Guang's mouth. His face turned pale gold. But that was not all. Everything happened while the fire ape was flying. Just as Mo Guang's flying sword was destroyed and his mind was damaged, the fire ape had already flown in front of Mo Guang. Mo Guang did not have the time to take out any Dharma artifacts. All he saw was the fire ape reaching out its hand and grabbing the top of Mo Guang's head. The defensive true qi on Mo Guang's body flashed slightly before it was broken. It did not seem to be able to resist. With a poo qi sound, the fire ape's claws directly penetrated Mo Guang's skull. The intense pain caused Mo Guang to cry out involuntarily. However, under the fire ape's suppression that was comparable to a golden core, and under the divine will that was several times stronger than Mo Guang's, Mo Guang did not have the slightest ability to resist. He was like a little chick that had lost all its feathers. With a slight force from the fire ape's hand, Mo Guang's skull was ripped open, revealing the white brain matter inside. When the fire ape saw the brain matter, saliva flowed out from its mouth. It stuck out its tongue and actually ate Mo Guang's brain matter raw. Evil creature! After Mo Guang's brain matter was eaten by the fire ape, Mo Guang's corpse, which had died with his eyes wide open, was casually burned by the fire ape with the true samadhi fire. A trembling but excited voice sounded from behind the fire ape. When the fire ape turned its head impatiently, it saw Pu Genyuan holding a Dharma artifact that had turned into a ball of light. There was an inexplicable excitement on his face as he chased after it with extreme speed. Behind him, Ling Zhengyi was also trying his best to catch up. However, looking at Ling Zhengyi's slightly pale face, it seemed that he was slightly injured. His flying technique was a little forced, and he was about a few feet behind Pu Genyuan. A trace of disgust flashed across the fire ape's eyes. However, when the Dharma artifact landed in its eyes, there was a lot of fear and dread. At this moment, it heard Pu Genyuan's loud shout. The Dharma artifact in his hand flew into the air like the rising sun. From the Dharma artifact, red and white light shot out and enveloped the fire ape. The red and white light was extremely fast. Before the fire ape could react, it had already hit the fire ape. Wherever the red and white light went, the flames on the fire ape's body would be extinguished. Roar! The fire ape raised its head and roared, as if it was in extreme pain. It did not dare to meet the attack head-on. With a somersault in the air, its body flew far away. Seeing this, Pu Genyuan was overjoyed. He urged his divine will and the Dharma artifact in his hand also released a Dharma artifact. The Dharma artifact shone brightly and chased after the fire ape. Following Pu Genyuan's chase was naturally Ling Zhengyi. However, Ling Zhengyi's face was far from Pu Genyuan's excitement. His eyes were filled with doubt. When he saw that the fire ape was not flying as fast as before, a trace of understanding appeared on his face. Hence, his flying speed became even slower. However, even though Ling Zhengyi's speed was slower, he still continued to follow and did not give up. After all, this fire ape was the main reason why Misty Mountain came to the Flame Forest swamp this time. However, no matter how much Ling Zhengyi thought about it, He did not expect that the fire ape would be imprisoned under this Dharma artifact. Furthermore, it was a 5th-grade spirit beast that was comparable to a golden core cultivator. A 5th-grade spirit beast, a golden core cultivator that could tear apart a Foundation establishment middle-stage cultivator. How could he give up on this? With the Dharma artifact that was passed down in his family, which was specially used to subdue spirit beasts in Dharma arrays. Even if there was only a trace of hope, he was willing to give it a try. Fortunately, Ling Zhengyi still did not get carried away by the records in the ancient books and only followed from a distance. At the same time, Xiaohua and Wuxia had already flown to the edge of the flame forest swamp. Looking at the crimson sand under their feet, as well as the brown-red earth and rocks, as well as the similarly fiery red Zhuotong mountain, Xiaohua stared blankly and asked in a low voice, "Is this the flame forest swamp? How come there isn't even a single blade of grass? What kind of forest is this? What kind of swamp is this?" Hee hee, Wuxia covered her mouth and laughed. "Who said that only 2 trees can form a forest? Fellow Taoist, take a look, there are countless stone pillars over there. Aren't they also able to form a stone forest? This can be said like that? Then what about the swamp? It can't be a swamp, right?" Xiaohua asked in amazement. Fellow Taoist Xiao is too dogmatic. This place is so hot, even an egg placed on the ground would be cooked. How can there be a swamp? As for the swamp, I believe that fellow Taoist Xiao will be able to see it after a while, right? Wuxia blinked her eyes and just didn't tell Xiaohua the answer. Xiaohua looked around. In this flame forest swamp, other than stone, there was only stone and gravel. Everywhere was a fiery red color. Where could he see even half a drop of water? But I know that the place is indeed a crimson red mountain range. But I didn't say that every place is crimson red. Xiaohua scratched his head and said, "According to I, the crimson red mountain range can only be found in flame forest swamp. I really haven't heard of it in other places." So when fellow Taoist Xiao mentioned it, I's first thought was flame forest swamp. As for the name of the place, perhaps we can also find it if we search a bit more, Wuxia said with a smile. I also know a bit about it. I'm afraid that it won't be easy to find it. Why don't we go to the place where there was an explosion just now? Maybe we can find something. Xiaohua suggested. I also have the same idea. Wuxia nodded, but we still need to be careful, don't make any mistakes. After the two finished talking, they flew up again. After the time it took to eat a meal, a huge basin appeared in front of Xiaohua's eyes. It was precisely the basin where Ling Zhengyi and Pu Jianyuan broke the formation earlier. At this time, the fiery red magma had already stopped gushing out, and the basin was covered with a thick layer of magma. At first glance, it really looked like a fiery red lake. And the 2 disciples from Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Ridge had already disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1447. This is the so-called pond? Seeing the magma, Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. Fellow Taoist Xiao is brilliant, this is the fire pond. Wuxia said with a smile. Sigh, it's really better to travel 10,000 miles than to read 10,000 books. Xiaohua looked at the magma on the ground and said with emotion, It's not that I didn't know about magma before, but I never thought that magma could actually form a fire pond. There are really all kinds of strange things in the world. Fellow Taoist Xiao, it's not just that, right? Wuxia glanced at the basin and pointed at the place where the formation was just now. At this time, the formation was already torn apart by the fire ape, revealing a large hole with a radius of 10 feet. From that large hole, there was some white gas that came out from time to time. This is... Xiaohua and Wuxia cautiously flew above the hole on the ground and carefully looked inside. The inside of the hole was very dark, and only in the very depths, there was a faint red color. Inside this hole, is magma also? How can this magma come out from such a deep place? Xiaohua was a little puzzled. Wuxia's face showed a trace of excitement and said softly, There must be a treasure in this hole. Flying Phoenix Ridge's Pu family must have come for the treasure in this hole. If it's not a treasure, how can this magma come out from the ground? But I don't see anyone from the Pu family here. Then wouldn't the treasure have already been taken away by them? Xiao Hua was also a little disappointed when he heard that. He looked carefully again and said, "This place is not consistent with what the ancient book said. There might not be any fire essence flame crystal. Why don't we go somewhere else to look?" Fellow Taoist Xiao, fire essence flame crystal. As the name suggests, it's using fire as the flesh to form the marrow, using fire as the essence to form the flame. This hole is so deep, and there's a treasure accompanying it. The possibility of there being a fire essence flame crystal is very high. If we don't go down and take a look, wouldn't it be a waste of a trip? Xiao Hua looked at the hole, and a faint wild aura came out. He unconsciously felt a little unhappy and said with a smile, "What fellow Taoist Kai said is reasonable. But I keep feeling that it's not appropriate." Fellow Taoist Xiao, this flame forest swamp, was chosen by fellow Taoist. If we can find the place fellow Taoist pointed to, then I can only shamelessly ask for 30% of the fire essence flame crystals. This cave, I discovered it at the same time. If there is a fire essence flame crystal, we can split it equally. Fellow Taoist Xiao is drooling over the martial arts taught by Xuanyan. Wouldn't I also desire it? Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish, Wuxia interrupted him. Xiao Hua hesitated and wanted to persuade him again. Fellow Taoist Xiao this time. Just follow I. Wuxia looked at Xiao Hua very pitifully. I took back the initiative with great difficulty. Xiao Hua immediately thought of Li Zongbao's flying sword and hurriedly nodded. No problem. Fellow Taoist Kai. We'll do as fellow Taoist said. However, how about I go down first? I was thinking that if I went down first, I would get an extra 10%. Wuxia covered her mouth and laughed. Forget it, fellow Taoist Kai. I's flying talisman is easy to use. If there is anything wrong, I can also escape quickly. Fellow Taoist should follow behind I. Xiao Hua said with a bitter smile. We'll do as fellow Taoist Xiao said. Wuxia jumped in the air and laughed while clapping her hands. Sigh, Xiao Hua sighed and shook his head. He took out the devil's spear and held it in his hand. He slowly flew down into the cave. Wuxia also slowly followed. She took out a stack of yellow talismans and was carefully on guard. Just after Xiao Hua and Wuxia flew down into the cave, on a crimson mountain peak in the basin, a cultivator with a pale face and a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth slowly climbed up from the ground. He straightened his body and looked at the direction the fire ape flew towards and the lava in the basin. He said to himself weakly, "Uncle, don't be greedy. Don't go for wool and come home shorn." This cultivator was Xue. The cave was extremely deep. Xiao Hua and Wuxia were carefully on guard and flew slowly. They actually flew for the time it took to brew a cup of tea before they gradually reached the bottom of the cave. At this time, it was already extremely hot. Although the two of them had already used the weak water talisman, the brilliance of the weak water talisman could only ensure that their bodies and robes were not burned. However, the extreme heat still made the two of them feel very uncomfortable. Wow! When Xiao Hua flew down to a certain height, the stone wall gradually disappeared. What Xiao Hua saw was actually a crimson sea of fire. The lava in the sea of fire was like water ripples. On top of the lava, there were several feet of flames moving up and down. This is the real lake. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. Top-grade crystal stones? Xiao Hua was lost in thought when he heard Wuxia shouting behind him. Where? Xiao Hua was also overjoyed. Seeing Wuxia quickly fly towards the distant stone wall, his eyes also lit up. Sure enough, at the place where the stone wall and the lava came in contact, there were some fist-sized bright red, fiery crystals. They reflected the fiery red folds of the lava and shone brightly. Weren't they the top-grade fire-type spirit stones? Wuxia's movements were fast, and Xiao Hua was not slow either. The two of them pounced towards different parts of the same stone wall. However, when they were still several feet away from the stone wall, a sudden change occurred. Xiao Hua suddenly felt that the flight talisman and the weak water talisman suddenly lost their effect. His body could no longer fly, and he fell straight into the lava and flames. Damn it! Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly urged his magic power and poured it into the flight talisman. However, the flight talisman did not seem to have any reaction. What should I do? Xiao Hua's face was ashen. He was at a loss. And at this moment, Xiao Hua had already fallen into the flames. The heat of the lava had already ignited Xiao Hua's robes. My life is over. Xiao Hua looked at the crimson lava that was close at hand and wailed in his heart. He was in despair. Seeing that he was about to fall into the magma and lose his life, the true qi in the meridians of Xiao Hua's entire body suddenly flowed rapidly. His spiritual power involuntarily rushed to Xiao Hua's hands, and his hands also naturally formed hand seals at a rapid speed. A series of strange yet extremely familiar hand seals were cast. With a plop sound, Xiao Hua's body fell into the crimson lava. It was also at this moment that the hand seals in his hands were finally completed. A dark red light shield was formed around Xiao Hua's body, blocking the hot lava outside of Xiao Hua's body. Ha! Xiao Hua looked around in amazement. His two hands moved again, and his figure was actually able to swim in the magma. With another plop sound, Wuxia also fell into the lava. It was also the top of Xiao Hua's head. Ayo, this is bad. Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and immediately flew over to support Wuxia's body. However, when he supported Wuxia's body, it was already too late. Wuxia fell into the lava lying flat. At this time, half of her body had already been swallowed by the lava. Her flesh was badly mutilated and scorched black. Fellow Kai. Xiao Hua stepped on the magma and supported Wuxia with one hand. Seeing this situation, he turned pale with fright and shouted. His other hand quickly took out a best-quality parasol pill from the space and stuffed it into Wuxia's mouth. Wuxia's eyes were closed tightly and she was unconscious, but as the parasol pill liquid entered her throat, her eyelashes trembled slightly. Hey, fellow Kai. How did you change? Seeing Wuxia's movement, Xiao Hua noticed that the current Wuxia was different from what he usually saw. The black color on her face gradually faded, her thick black eyebrows gradually curved, and her somewhat thick lips gradually thinned. When Wuxia opened her eyes, she had already become a woman who was even more beautiful than Shui and Wuxia. What's going on? Xiao Hua was extremely puzzled. Fellow Xiao. Wuxia woke up and saw Xiao Hua's face full of surprise. She forced a smile and said, I hid it from fellow Taoist for a long time. I hope you can forgive me. Fellow Kai, I don't blame you. You bear with it. I found a way out, let's see how to get out. At this time, how could Xiao Hua still care about this? He comforted Wuxia and then looked around to see where to fly to the surface. Fellow Taoist Xiao, I'm afraid I can't. My qi is completely gone. My meridians are completely broken, damaged. I'm afraid I don't have much time left in this world. Wuxia slowly said. Gradually, her tone also became smooth, but looking at the red blush on her face, she was afraid that this was the final radiance of the setting sun. I have a few things to tell fellow Taoist. I hope fellow Taoist Xiao will promise I on account of the fact that we went through fire and water together. Fellow Taoist Kai, please speak. As long as I can do it, I will definitely promise. Xiao Hua said with tears in his eyes. There are things in the storage bag that fellow Taoist gave to I. I hope fellow Taoist can bring them to the Kai family of Lu Yang and personally hand them to my younger sister, Fairy Xianxia. My Kai family is really poor. The rise of the Kai family is completely dependent on these things. And I promise. Xiao Hua nodded. There is a token in the storage bag with a bamboo pattern on it. It was also given to I by fellow Taoist Xiao. That is the last good fate token of the rinsing flower sect. I hope fellow Taoist can give it to Xianxia and let her enter the rinsing flower sect. In the future, the Kai family will be handed over to her. That is the good fate token? Xiao Hua was stunned, but he still nodded and said, I know. The good fate token will definitely be given to your younger sister. I know that this good fate token is also useful to fellow Taoist Xiao. However, fellow Taoist Zhao's words carry enormous weight. Since you have promised, my younger sister will definitely receive it. I can also rest assured. As for this matter, I have let fellow Taoist Xiao down. I hope fellow Taoist can forgive I. Wuxia smiled faintly. At this moment, her smile was abnormally desolate. However, when paired with Wuxia's flower-like appearance, it was indescribably beautiful. Fellow Taoist Xiao has given I and the Kai family so many benefits. I have nothing to repay you with. My Kai family has a very profound transformation technique. I have been practicing this technique since I was young. This technique will definitely be useful to fellow Taoist. When you arrive at the Kai family of Lu Yang, you can ask my younger sister for it. Just say that I said so. Sai, actually, fellow Taoist Xiao, has unlimited potential. I have repeatedly invited fellow Taoists to my Kai family because I want to introduce my younger sister Xianxia to fellow Taoist. It's 100 times better than some shue shue. Cough cough. Wuxia's voice began to stutter, and her gaze also collapsed. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 1448. Hearing these words, Xiaohua suddenly understood. Then, he counted his nose and tears flowed down his cheeks. These were tears of sympathy, tears of gratitude, and tears of gratitude. At the same time, these tears were tears of empathy. Wuxia was only a 5th-level qi refining female cultivator, a mere disciple of a cultivation clan. For the sake of her clan's development, for her own cultivation, and for the sake of her younger sister, she had endured countless hardships and tribulations. Even in the end, she had given up her own life, but she had never forgotten her responsibilities. Thinking about himself, thinking about Shang Huaming, thinking about Xiao Yuehong, thinking about Gong Mingwei, Zhang Qingxiao, and Xiao Xianrue, how could Xiaohua not be hurt? Oh, fellow Taoist Xiao, don't forget these top-grade spirit stones, and eyes. 50%. Wuxia seemed to have thought of something and said in a soft voice, but her tone was like that of a little girl. I know, fellow Taoist Kai, don't worry, I will definitely personally give this 50% to Fairy Xianxia. Xiaohua nodded with tears in his eyes. Actually, I was really lucky to have met fellow Taoist Xiao. Not only did I get medicinal pills, even spirit stones. I also got a lot. Wuxia's pale lips moved slightly. But I still have to advise fellow Taoist, in the cultivation world, don't be too kind. After all, not every cultivator is as broad-minded as fellow Taoist Xiao. You see, even I felt that I was extremely benevolent to fellow Taoist Xiao and was magnanimous, but that good fate card was still concealed by I hope fellow Taoist Xiao can understand. Moreover, I acted like a spoiled child, and when you see I in the same situation again, you actually don't even want the top-grade spirit stones. This kind of soft-hearted person must not be allowed. Fellow Taoist gave me a lot of foundation establishment pills in this storage bag. You only need to leave half for my Kai family, and the rest, you can leave it all to fellow Taoist. Just treat it as using foundation establishment pills to exchange for fellow Taoist's top-grade spirit stones. Hearing these words, Xiaohua's heart became even more sorrowful. Wuxia had already said these words a moment ago, and now that she mentioned it again, her consciousness must have already begun to blur. She was not too far away. Wuxia's eyes were no longer looking at Xiaohua. She raised her head and looked at the black hole in the distance. Joy appeared on her face and she whispered, Fellow cultivator Zhong Bao. You still came. Did your master agree to let you dual cultivate with me? I know you're troubled. Don't be in such a hurry to tell me the answer. As long as you treat me sincerely, even if I can't always be by your side. As long as our hearts are together, I'll be satisfied. Zhong Bao, I regret my attitude that day. I shouldn't have left you. And left. But, Zhong Bao, you're an outstanding disciple of a famous sect. And you're already a foundation establishment. Senior. I am only an ordinary female cultivator from a cultivator family. I am really unworthy of you. I can be happy by your side, but it will also delay your cultivation. And if your senior and junior brothers find out that you actually dual cultivate with a low-level female cultivator. Wouldn't it make you lose face? And also make you lose the favor of your sect? So, I can't not leave you. I love you. I would rather for you, for your Tao, give up my love for you. I didn't expect you would actually be able to come back. Did your master agree? This is something I've been waiting for a long time. But by all means, don't be a concubine. I don't want to. So cold. Zongbao, hug me, just like, in my dream, you did to me. While speaking, Wuxia raised her arms with difficulty and hugged Xiaohua's neck. The elbows of her arms were completely destroyed by the lava and were charred black. Not to mention that Xiaohua had no way to avoid it. Even if he could, he didn't want to destroy Wuxia's last hope. However, just as Wuxia's arms touched Xiaohua's shoulders, her eyes became clear. Looking at Xiaohua, the redness on her face rapidly receded. Fellow Taoist Xiao, see a joke. Wuxia grimaced. Her arms were already powerless, so she could only place them on Xiaohua's shoulders. Only now did I realize that all kinds of cultivation, all kinds of divine abilities, can't compare to the dozens of days of happiness by fellow Taoist Zongbao's side. If fellow Taoist Xiao has this opportunity, please don't. I have a small silk pouch in my storage pouch. If fellow Taoist Xiao has the chance, please bring it to Zongbao on behalf of I think he'll understand my heart. As for what Zongbao thinks, I don't care. If he doesn't accept it, fellow Taoist can just burn it. If fellow Taoist is afraid of trouble, also burn it. Fellow Taoist Kai, don't worry. I agree to this matter, so I'll definitely accomplish it. Xiaohua didn't know why Wuxia didn't want him to give the silk pouch to her younger sister, but he still answered without the slightest hesitation. Also, Wuxia's face was suffused with a wave of grayish-black color. It was very obvious on her fair face. She said with difficulty, Luyang's Kai clan in the future, if fellow Taoist, achieves great success in divine abilities. I hope you can take care of them. This. Xiaohua didn't know how to answer. First of all, his cultivation was only at the 4th level of qi condensation. Even if he reached foundation establishment in the future, what qualifications did he have to care about other cultivator clans? As Xiaohua hesitated, Wuxia's eyes slowly closed. Her originally deathly pale lips didn't move in the slightest. Xiaohua sensed that Wuxia's body, which was still warm just a moment ago, was gradually becoming cold. There was something rapidly sucking away the heat in her body. Sigh, Xiaohua faintly shook his head. In his heart, he was somewhat regretful that he wasn't able to answer Wuxia's last question. Perhaps Wuxia didn't expect Xiaohua to answer. In a short moment, Wuxia's body was already ice-cold, without the slightest trace of life. Oh my, this fellow Taoist Kai has spoken for so long. She's already spoken of her family's matters, her younger sister's matters, and Li Zongbao's matters. But why hasn't she said how she's going to deal with her corpse? Her corpse was destroyed by lava. How should she deal with it? Should she be buried here or brought to Luyang's Kai clan? Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. After a moment of hesitation, Xiaohua bitterly smiled. Since he was going to Luyang, it was very simple to bring her corpse back. If he didn't bring her corpse back, he was afraid he wouldn't be able to explain himself to Luyang's Kai clan and Li Zongbao. Presumably, Xiaohua took the storage pouch from Wuxia's waist, took out a pink silk pouch from the storage pouch and put it into his space. Then, he put Wuxia's body inside. Fellow Taoist Kai, forgive me for my rudeness. When this poor Taoist goes out, he will find a coffin for fellow Taoist. Xiaohua muttered in his heart and put the storage pouch in his sleeve. Soon after, Xiaohua began to size up his surroundings. This was an extremely vast magma lake. Countless streams of magma were bubbling up. Every time it bubbled, it would ignite a few feet of flames. The entire surface of the lake was covered in flames. Alas, there's a restriction on this lava. All yellow talismans are ineffective. I don't have a flight talisman, so how can I fly? I'm afraid I can only look around and see where there's no restriction. Xiaohua sighed. He formed hand seals and walked towards a nearby stone wall. This really is a supreme-grade spirit stone. What a pity, fellow Taoist Kai. If you knew your life was in danger, would you still come down? Xiaohua looked at the glowing spirit stones on the stone wall and sighed with emotion. Humans die for wealth and birds die for food. Even cultivators were no exception. There were quite a few supreme-grade spirit stones on the surrounding stone walls. Xiaohua very carefully picked them one by one. When he finished picking the spirit stones on the lava, Xiaohua carefully formed hand seals and entered the lava, picking all of the supreme-grade spirit stones. This hand seal. What kind of hand seal is this? It can actually travel freely in the lava? Xiaohua pondered in bewilderment as he traveled through the lava. Fire escape. A vague thought emerged in his mind. However, before he could think carefully, the brilliance around his body began to flicker. Oh no, I don't have enough magic power. Xiaohua was alarmed. If he didn't have any magic power now, the fire escape technique would be ineffective. Wouldn't he be buried in the lava? Would he die even more miserably than Wuxia? Almost without thinking, Xiaohua immediately threw a few clear fragrance pills into the air. He hurriedly refined the medicinal power of the pills and replenished the true qi in his meridians. Following the replenishment of his true qi, his magic power also kept up. The brilliance protecting his body was also stable. I still have to hurry up and get out. This is not a long-term solution. Xiaohua had a plan in his mind and hurriedly swam away. However, he had just walked a few dozen feet when he was blocked by an invisible restriction. No matter how he thought of a way, he couldn't break through it. Even the invincible devil spear point didn't have any effect. Oh no, this restriction was probably there before. It's used to protect some treasure. Xiaohua's heart tightened. He followed the restriction and walked around the lava lake in a large circle. It was an area with a radius of several dozen feet. Xiaohua's heart turned cold. He really walked into a trap. Hey, if I can't go above and around the lava, then, what about under the lava? Xiaohua was suddenly moved, unable to conceal his joy. He formed a seal and dove into the magma. Although Xiaohua could freely swim in the magma, the deeper he dove, the greater the buoyancy force that lifted him up, preventing him from diving further. He had to expend even more magic power. And so, many clear water pills were consumed just like that. However, in the end, even if Xiaohua still had magic power in his body, he couldn't dive even an inch deeper. The resistance was like a hard and unbreakable iron wall, blocking Xiaohua's hope. Damn it! Does the heavens want me to die? Xiaohua cursed inwardly and prepared to swim to the side. But at this moment, a fiery red crystal the size of a mung bean streaked across his eyes. The red color of the crystal seemed to be similar to the surrounding magma, but it was also much deeper. Xiaohua's gaze swept across it, and his entire gaze was almost sucked in by that little bit of red. Fire essence flame crystal? When Xiaohua saw it, he wasn't as happy as he imagined. Instead, he was shocked. I haven't found the way out yet. What's the use of these? Xiaohua thought and casually put the fire essence flame crystal into his space. Chapter 1449. Xiaohua tossed about for the time it took to drink a cup of tea, and walked through all the places he could go. His surroundings were like an iron wall that surrounded him, and there was no way out. Of course, this restriction could even imprison a 5th-stage fire ape. Xiaohua was only a 4th-stage qi refining cultivator. How could he escape? However, because he had encountered the fire essence flame crystals, Xiaohua paid more attention. When he was looking for a way out, he searched the entire area of several hundred feet. From the magma, he found 6 fire essence flame crystals the size of mung beans. Normally, Xiaohua would be overjoyed. But today, seeing that there was no hope of escaping, who would be happy for these external objects? Perhaps he could only think of a way to escape from the sky. Xiaohua stared at the sky and thought helplessly. But his current 4th-stage qi refining cultivation could only rely on a flight talisman. Without a flight talisman, it was impossible for him to fly in the air. However, that layer of restriction made all the yellow talismans lose their effect. It was precisely targeting Xiaohua's weakness. "Io, how could I be so stupid?" Xiao Hua's gaze suddenly fell on the stone wall. He slapped his forehead and shouted, "Isn't there a stone wall here? I only need to climb to the top of the stone wall and avoid this layer of restriction. What else am I thinking?" After thinking about it, Xiao Hua swam to the stone wall. He reached out his hand and took out the devil's spear tip. With a bit of strength, the spear tip pierced into the hard stone wall. Then, Xiao Hua exerted more strength and pulled his body out of the lava. His body leaned against the stone wall. And then, Xiao Hua thought for a moment and took out the black iron needle from the space. Pinching a spell, the black iron needle also pierced into the stone wall with extreme sharpness, revealing a small tail. This was enough. Xiao Hua was only using it to borrow force. Xiao Hua used his hand to tap on the black iron needle, and his body flew up like a swallow, leaping high into the air. Without waiting for his body to land, he pierced his hand again, and the tip of the devil's spear pierced into the smooth stone wall, stabilizing his body. Immediately after, Xiao Hua controlled the black iron needle while using the devil's spear's tip. In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he had already climbed to a height of about 10 zhang. Seeing that it was about the same as the place he had fallen at, Xiao Hua took out a flight talisman and placed it on his body. He slightly activated his magic power and his figure suddenly floated up. Good. Xiao Hua couldn't help but praise himself in his heart. Then, without any hesitation, he flew towards the ground. Xiao Hua's flying speed was extremely fast. Although the magma was extremely far from the ground, he still flew to the entrance of the cave in an extremely short period of time. Seeing the increasingly large cave entrance and the azure sky above the cave entrance, Xiao Hua's heart was once again filled with joy. Right at this moment, a black shadow appeared above the hole in the ground. Not only did the black shadow block the hole, but a wave of pressure and divine sense also surged over, tightly locking onto Xiao Hua. Not good. Xiao Hua instantly understood that this shadow definitely had something to do with the explosion in the basin just now. Maybe this cave entrance was discovered and destroyed by this Foundation establishment cultivator. If he and Wuxia secretly went in, wouldn't they be violating his taboo? What should I do? Should I rush down again? Xiao Hua's mind raced, but right at this moment, a voice above his head said strangely, "Huh? How come it's you?" Although the voice was very soft, Xiao Hua heard it clearly. Just when the divine sense swept over his body again, his heart was also moved. This divine sense is somewhat familiar. Which senior is it? Come up, don't resist. In front of this old man, you're just a little doll. That voice coldly echoed from above his head. Xiao Hua felt that the Foundation establishment senior had already retracted his pressure, but the divine sense was still locked onto him. As long as he made any strange movements, Xiao Hua absolutely believed that there would be a Foundation establishment divine ability that he didn't know about that would cover the sky and cover the earth. Just like a child who made a mistake and had to face an adult who punished him, Xiao Hua very helplessly slowly flew above the cave entrance. As soon as he came out of the ground, the brilliant sunlight shone on Xiao Hua's body. A kind of feeling of escaping from the heavens spontaneously arose from the bottom of his heart. Soon after, Xiao Hua very strangely sized up the fat cultivator in front of him, secretly saying in his heart, "This person. I'm not familiar with him. If I've seen him somewhere before, how could I not have an impression of him? Who else could this Foundation establishment cultivator be?" Naturally, it was the Misty Mountains patriarch, Ling Zhengyi. He only heard Ling Zhengyi say with a cold smile, "You're called Xiao Hua, right? Why did you come here instead of staying in Yenyuan City?" And Yenyuan City? Xiao Hua suddenly realized. Wasn't this cultivator's divine sense the same one that swept over him when he was talking to Shui after the auction in Yenyuan City? Could it be? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he bowed respectfully. This junior is indeed Xiao Hua. What is senior's relationship with Shui? How should this junior address senior? How did you know? Did that girl tell you? Ling Zhengyi was very shocked and asked curiously. Of course Shui didn't tell this junior, but this junior just passed by Yenyuan City and only met Shui in Yenyuan City. Therefore, this junior boldly guessed. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Humph. Don't give me so many reasons. Hurry up and tell me why you're here. Ling Zhengyi waved his hand and asked fiercely. Xiaohua hesitated for a moment, then said with a smile, I'll let senior know. This junior only came to Yanlin's swamp to look for top-quality crystals. Just as I arrived, I encountered a huge commotion. This junior thought there was some treasure and wanted to try my luck. In the end, you saw this cave? That's right. Inside this cave. What's inside? What did you get? Ling Zhengyi coldly looked at Xiaohua's storage bag with an unfriendly expression. I'll let senior know. Deep inside this cave is a magma lake. I's cultivation is shallow, so I didn't dare to go in. I didn't get anything. Xiaohua sighed and said, Is that so? Ling Zhengyi's eyes narrowed and said in a low voice, Oh, that's right, senior. There's a powerful restriction formation about 100 feet above the magma. I almost fell into the magma when I went down. Senior, you must be careful when you go down. Ah? Hearing this, Ling Zhengyi couldn't help but be shocked. What kind of restriction is it? As for what kind of restriction it is, this junior doesn't know. I only know that the fellow cultivator who came with me didn't have such good luck. He fell into the magma from the restriction and didn't come back up. Is that so? Hearing this, Ling Zhengyi's brows slightly relaxed. He looked Xiaohua up and down and said with a smile, Xiaohua, you're so honest. When this old man asked one, you actually said two, as if you didn't hold back at all. If you didn't say it, wouldn't this old man have lost his life when he flew into the ground? Then didn't you escape with your life? Senior. This junior and senior don't have any grudges? Senior. Why do you want to take this junior's life? Xiaohua's face was full of panic. You're just a little loose cultivator. You actually have ideas about my Misty Mountains, Miss Shui. Don't you think you deserve to die? Misty Mountain? Shui. Xiaohua was surprised. This junior and fellow cultivator Shui met by chance. We've only met a few times. Senior can't speak carelessly. Naturally, I won't speak carelessly. This old man only needs to imprison you and throw you into this cave. Who in this world will speak carelessly? Ling Zhengyi waved his hand and cast a spell. Xiaohua didn't have any power to resist and was firmly imprisoned. Xiaohua didn't struggle and said coldly, If you want to condemn someone, why worry about the pretext? If senior wants to kill me to silence me, just do it. Why do you need to drag fellow cultivator Shui into this? I and fellow cultivator Shui are innocent. If senior says it like this, it's actually dirty. What a good little loose cultivator. Indeed worthy of Shui's praise. The more outstanding you are, the more I can't let you go. My Shui is looking for an outstanding disciple of a famous sect to dual cultivate with. You can only be a skeleton in the magma. As Ling Zhengyi spoke, he waved his hand and Xiaohua's body was lifted into the air. Following Ling Zhengyi's movements, he slowly fell into the cave. Just as Xiaohua's body fell into the cave, a voice faintly said, Uncle, you should let fellow cultivator Xiao go. Xiaohua didn't find it strange because this voice belonged to Shui. You heard everything? Ling Zhengyi laughed and put Xiaohua on the ground again. Uncle's voice was so loud. Didn't you want niece to hear it? Shui looked at Xiaohua with some annoyance and said to Ling Zhengyi, Didn't niece tell uncle? Niece and fellow cultivator Xiao have only met a few times. How could there be such a thing as uncle said? Even if you didn't tell niece wouldn't do any dual cultivation with fellow cultivator Xiao. Although Shui's face was a bit pale at this time, her eyebrows were picturesque. Her eyes moved and there was a bit of shyness. Xiaohua also felt very comfortable looking at her. Since there's no meaning, why don't uncle kill him? Wouldn't that be the end of it? Ling Zhengyi said with a smile. Oh, so it's like that. Shui said with a smile, since uncle has such a plan, niece will definitely agree. However, Shui's tone changed and said, However, my Misty Mountain received a lot of benefits during the auction in Yenabis City. If uncle doesn't want to have any inner demons, then you should quickly kill Xiaohua. Received a lot of benefits? Xiaohua didn't understand. Shui with such words, how can uncle kill him? Ling Zhengyi scratched his head and laughed loudly. Then, with a wave of his hand, the shackles on Xiaohua's body were released. Many thanks for Senior's mercy. Xiaohua bowed in thanks. Fellow Taoist Xiao, when I heard the bad news about fellow Taoist Kai just now, I also felt very sad. Fellow Taoist Kai and fellow Taoist Xiao were a match made in heaven. Her departure is very regrettable. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please restrain your grief. This. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He rubbed his nose and didn't know how to explain. Fellow cultivator Xiao, you can go now. However, don't tell anyone about this matter for now. In a few days, there will be people coming to investigate. I believe that fellow cultivator Xiao won't tell anyone about my Misty Mountain, right? Hee, fellow cultivator Xue, don't worry. I am not the kind of person who speaks casually. I believe that I already knew about it from the Imperial Pill School. Xue said with a smile. Fellow cultivator Xiao, please. Xiaohua's heart relaxed. He cupped his hands and was about to leave when Ling Zhengyi suddenly shouted, "Wait!" Chapter 1450. Xiaohua was very relieved. Just as he was about to leave, he heard Ling Zhengyi call out to him, "Wait, Xiaohua, don't you want to know who I am?" Xiaohua's heart jumped, and he smiled apologetically. Junior has already asked for Senior Xue's name, but Senior Xue avoided answering, but... Ha, Xiaohua, I have already said the name of Misty Mountain, don't tell me you still don't know? Ling Zhengyi laughed. Xiaohua was indeed confused, and he said, Junior really doesn't know, it's really rude, please enlighten me, Senior Xue. I'll let fellow Taoist Xiao know, my uncle is the family head of Misty Mountain, surnamed Ling and given name Zhengyi, fellow Taoist must remember. Xue also covered her mouth and laughed. This, Senior Ling, Junior knows. Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed. All right, I stopped you not just to let you know my name. Ling Zhengyi said mysteriously. I have a good thing to give you. Xiaohua didn't dare to believe it, and he said with a smile, Junior doesn't dare to have extravagant hopes. Senior, if you have something to say, there's no harm in saying it. Ling Zhengyi patted his storage bag, and there was a large seal magic tool and a small book. He handed it over and he said with a smile, because of fellow Taoist Xiao, my Misty Mountain obtained a lot of benefits in this auction, so I can't thank you, this magic tool. And the refining method are for you, you can carefully study it after you reach Foundation establishment. Uncle, you this. Xue saw the magic tool in Ling Zhengyi's hand, and she immediately turned pale with fright. How can you give this thing away? Xiaohua's heart trembled, and he immediately withdrew his hand, waving it, and said, Junior really doesn't dare to accept such a precious thing. Senior, please take back your order. Haha, Xue, this isn't the magic tool you think it is. Ling Zhengyi patted his storage bag, and took out an identical magic tool, and said with a smile, the one you gave Xiaohua is a fake. However, the power of this fake is also not small. If Xiaohua can successfully refine it, it will be a great help to him. But Xue was still somewhat puzzled, but she didn't say anything more. Counterfeit. Xiaohua looked at the magic tool and muttered in his heart for a while. He reached out to receive it and put it into his storage bag. He bowed and thanked. Many thanks for Senior Ling's kindness. Haha, this is how a man should behave. Daring and daring. Ling Zhengyi was very happy. Patting Xiaohua's shoulder, he said, if one day you succeed in refining this fake, you might as well come to my Misty Mountain again. At that time, this old man's thoughts might also change. As he spoke, he glanced at Xue. How could Xiaohua not know what Ling Zhengyi meant? He cupped his hands and said, Junior, who knew that Ling Zhengyi's expression changed slightly, and he patted Xiaohua's shoulder and said, all right, don't say any words of thanks and explanations. You should quickly go and cultivate properly. Once you have successfully built your foundation, you can come back to Misty Mountain to look for Xue. Seeing Ling Zhengyi asking him to leave, Xiaohua also stood up and said with a smile, then this junior will be leaving. All right, go ahead. Ling Zhengyi said kindly, however, if it's possible, don't use the teleportation portal. Yenyuan City will do something that will be detrimental to you. Yes, this junior understands. Xiaohua couldn't wait to leave. After cupping his hands, he flew up into the air. First, he slowly flew away. When he felt that there was no longer any divine sense locking onto him, He immediately activated all the magic power in his body and quickly flew away. Uncle, why is this? Shui waited for Xiaohua's figure to disappear and immediately asked, that magic tool. It should be from Phoenix Ridge's Pooh family, right? Even if Xiaohua has indirectly helped my Misty Mountain, but letting him live is enough to make up for it. Why did you give him such a valuable magic tool? Shu, Ling Zhengyi's face darkened, and he scolded. Other than you and me, only the heavens and earth know about this matter. You absolutely cannot let anyone else know. And from now on, never mention it again. Shui didn't understand, but she still nodded and said, yes, this niece understands. Just as Shui's voice fell, a divine sense swept over. From afar, a cultivator in a rather sorry state flew out. That cultivator's hairbun was loose and crooked. The Taoist robe on his body had some burn marks and even some holes. However, that cultivator didn't care about this. Instead, his face was filled with panic. His divine sense swept around, and when he saw Ling Zhengyi and Shui, his face was somewhat happy. He flew down and immediately shouted, Ling Zhengyi, quickly return this old man's magic tool. This cultivator was none other than Phoenix Ridge's Pu Genyuan, who was chasing the 5th grade fire ape with Ling Zhengyi. Io, Pu Genyuan, you're greedy and insatiable. You vainly tried to take the 5th grade fire ape as your spiritual pet, but you didn't expect that because the fire ape's cultivation level was too high, your magic tool that was specially designed to restrain the fire ape lost its effect. You were sent flying by the fire ape and you couldn't find it yourself. Why did you come to find I to denounce me? Ling Zhengyi mocked and ridiculed. I only had self-awareness and escaped a step earlier. How could I take your magic tool? Humph, if the magic tool wasn't with you, if you didn't imprison the magic tool, why couldn't I sense it? In the cultivation world of the country of Xi, other than fellow Taoist Ling, who else could have such understanding of I's magic tool? How could Pu Genyuan believe him? Ling Zhengyi didn't back down and said curiously, of course it's possible for I. However, could it be that fellow Taoist Pu has forgotten about the fire ape? Or other gold core stage seniors? Pu Genyuan's face slightly changed and he unconsciously pondered. How about this, fellow Taoist Pu? If you don't believe me, I will make a heart oath. Ling Zhengyi smiled and said, if I, Ling Zhengyi, take Pu Genyuan's magic tool now, I, Ling Zhengyi, will be stuck in the early stage of foundation establishment in this lifetime, and will not be able to advance in the slightest. Hee, what if fellow Taoist hid the magic tool somewhere? Pu Genyuan sneered. Oh, if I, Ling Zhengyi, take Pu Genyuan's magic tool and hide it somewhere, I, Ling Zhengyi, will be stuck in the early stage of foundation establishment in this lifetime, and will not be able to advance in the slightest. Ling Zhengyi said without hesitation. If you don't hide it somewhere, can't you let someone else hide it? Pu Genyuan looked at Shui beside Ling Zhengyi, and his gaze fell on the storage bag on Shui's waist. Hee, fellow Taoist Pu, you still don't believe me. Ling Zhengyi laughed and said, if I, Ling Zhengyi, take Pu Genyuan's magic tool and give it to my Ling family's disciple for safekeeping, I, Ling Zhengyi, will be stuck in the early stage of foundation establishment in this lifetime, and will not be able to advance in the slightest. This. Seeing Ling Zhengyi so resolute and without hesitation, Pu Genyuan thought for a moment and sighed. Then, I really misunderstood fellow Taoist Ling. Please forgive me. It's fine. Ling Zhengyi laughed and said, previously, I didn't know the relationship between my Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Ridge, and only thought that you were an ordinary fellow Taoist. But looking at your family's magic tool, and the secret of this fire ape, if you say that our families have nothing to do with each other, I'm afraid that I will be the first to disagree. Isn't that so? I also lost my mind at that time, and wanted to take fellow Taoist Ling's magic tool. Hee, who would have thought that it was actually a flood that washed into the Dragon King temple? I really deserve to die. Pu Genyuan cupped his hands and said, ignorance is not a crime. Ling Zhengyi returned the salute. Our families still need to get closer in the future. Maybe there will be even more amazing discoveries. Not to mention anything else, just, if we can subdue this fire ape, Flying Phoenix Ridge and Misty Mountain, we'll definitely be able to spread throughout the country of Xi. Pu Genyuan laughed, but then his face became sad again. I still need to hurry and find that family's magic tool. This thing really involves too many things. I can't not look for it. But Fellow Taoist Pu, don't you want to go down and take a look? Ling Xianxia pointed at the hole in the ground and suggested. This. Pu Genuan hesitated again, thought for a moment and said, since that's the case, why not go down and take a look? Then, who will go down first? Ling Xianxia scratched his head and said, you. Fellow Taoist Ling, go down first. Pu Genuan was very humble, which was rare. Forget it, fellow Taoist Pu just lost his magic tool. I will let fellow Taoist Pu go down first. Ling Xianxia thought for a moment and shook his head. Really? Pu Genuan asked with a smile. Of course, fellow Taoist Pu, please. Ling Xianxia raised his hand and said, however, there may be restrictions in the cave. Fellow Taoist must be careful. Well said, I will open the way for fellow Taoist Ling. Pu Genuan laughed, clapped his hands, and a fiery red flying sword appeared in his hand, and flew into the cave with the sword. Shwe, it's dangerous inside, you wait here. Ling Xianxia ordered. Yes, uncle. Then, Ling Xianxia followed Pu Genuan into the cave. Not long after, Ling Xianxia and Pu Genuan flew out of the cave. Ling Xianxia was unharmed, but Pu Genuan was in a mess. Looking at Ling Xianxia's expressionless face, Shwe knew that the two of them had found nothing. But then again, this was where the fire ape was sealed. How could there be any treasures? Uncle, Shwe whispered. Go to the mountain peak and send out a signal to gather the disciples. We are going to go back. Ling Xianxia waved his hand and said to Shwe. Yes, Shwe flew to the mountain peak next to the basin. What should we do here? Ling Xianxia pointed and asked Pu Genuan. Mo Guang from Yenyuan City died here. Yenyuan City will definitely come looking for him. Also, we caused too much of a commotion when we broke the array. In a few days, there will be people coming. Instead of letting people guess, why don't we do nothing? There's nothing here anyway, so we don't have to worry about people finding out. Brother Pu's thinking is very meticulous. We'll do as you say. Ling Xianxia cupped his hands and said, I will bring the disciples back now. What about you, Brother Pu? Cough, of course, I still have to go look for a magical item. You can go first. Pu Genuan said awkwardly. All right, then I will go first. We'll meet again later. Ling Xianxia cupped his hands and said goodbye. He flew to the mountain peak and sat down cross-legged, waiting for the disciples to gather. Looking at Ling Xianxia's back, Pu Genuan's brows furrowed tightly. He thought to himself strangely, could it be that my magic item really wasn't taken by this fellow? Chapter 1451. Xiaohua left the basin. At first, he didn't dare to fly at full speed. He only flew at the speed of a fourth-layer qi refining cultivator. After flying for a while, he sensed that there was no divine sense following him. Immediately, he mustered up his magic power and activated the flying talisman. He quickly flew in the direction he came from. Even when his magic power was exhausted, he didn't dare to stop. He threw a clear fragrance pill into his mouth and refined the medicinal power of the pill. At the same time, he continued to circulate his magic power. When the flying talisman lost its effect, he changed it again. It seemed that he didn't dare to delay. After flying for a day and a night, Xiaohua finally stopped. He identified the direction and immediately changed his direction, flying in an unrelated direction. 2 days later, Xiaohua arrived at a mountain range that was also scarlet red. Xiaohua didn't dare to stay outside for too long. He found a dry cave and drilled his head into it. He used a huge rock to seal the cave entrance and sat on the ground. His eyes focused on his nose focused on his heart, and his heart focused on cultivating. Xiaohua had taken a lot of clear fragrance pills in the magma lake. There was a lot of medicinal power in his meridians that hadn't been refined. It was the same on the way here. At this time, he already felt that his meridians were somewhat blocked. Xiaohua circulated his true qi through his meridians several times in a row, refining all of the remaining medicinal energy. Only then did he stand up, patted his storage pouch, and took out the magical tool and small book that Ling Xianxia gave him. After carefully looking at it for a long time, Xiaohua didn't see anything wrong with it. However, Ling Zhengyi was a foundation establishment cultivator. How could Xiao Hua see through what he was doing? However, Xiao Hua wasn't afraid at all. With a wave of his hand, the magic tool and small book were both placed into the space. Anxiously, Xiao Hua pushed away the huge rock that was blocking the entrance of the cave and flew out of the cave. He didn't stop to rest and flew in another direction. This flight took more than a few days. He was already far away from that scarlet red mountain rock. On this day, seeing that the sky was already dark, Xiao Hua's figure stopped in midair and looked around with some hesitation. Hi, needless to say, this guy must have lost his way and doesn't know where to fly. Xiao Hua originally remembered the direction to Shihuang town, but because he wanted to set up a maze to prevent Ling Zhengyi and the others from finding him, he flew around randomly. At first, his mind was clear, but after a few times, he became confused. He didn't know if he had shaken them off or not, but he couldn't find the direction to Shihuang town anymore. Looking at the sky and the surrounding terrain, Xiao Huafei landed on the ground and found a place with water to rest. Just as he drank 2 mouthfuls of water and lay on the ground to look at the darkening sky, the sound of something breaking through the air came from not far away. Io, could it be that the disciples of Ling Zhengyi's sect are chasing after us? Xiao Hua was shocked. He quickly got up from the ground and hid his body among the vines beside the stream. Just as Xiao Hua hid well, a 7th-layer qi refining cultivator landed on a tree not far away. His figure gradually rose and fell, then gradually came to a stop and became one with the night sky. This person seems to be a disciple of Flying Phoenix Mountain Range? Xiao Hua saw clearly and thought to himself, he's following that clan master Pu from Flying Phoenix Mountain Range. Looking at his appearance, he's not chasing after me, but instead waiting for someone. Sure enough, after waiting for nearly an hour, a similar figure also flew over from the night sky. That figure hadn't even landed on the ground when a voice came. Senior brother Pu Chi, this is a sensitive time, why are you in such a hurry to send a message? If it wasn't for this little brother's vigilance, I'm afraid that Ling Yan would have already seen through me. Ling Yan? That guy always thinks he's smart and thinks that he's the only smart person in the world. How could he discover our situation? How could he know that Ling Chongya should be called Pu Chongya? The cultivator called Pu Chi chuckled. Don't say so many useless things. What's the matter? This little brother still has to hurry back. If Ling Zhengyi were to find out, wouldn't he skin this little brother alive? The cultivator who called Ling Chongya hurriedly asked. This guy. He was transported here together with me and Kai Wuxia. He's one of those 3 cultivators. He's actually a disciple of the Ling clan? Oh, that's not right. He should be a disciple of the Pu clan. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. Skin my ass. Didn't you see that the Ling clan's inherited magic tool is so similar to our Pu clan's? What's the relationship between our Pu clan and the Ling clan? Maybe in the future, the Ling clan and the Pu clan will be one. Why would he skin you? Pu Chi curled his lips and said, Ah? Pu Chi was just casually saying this, but when Xiao Hua heard it, it was like a bolt from the blue. He thought of Ling Zhengyi's appearance when he took his magic tool and Xue Xue's extremely surprised expression. Could it be the magic tool in my space? Sure enough, he heard Ling Chongya wave his hand and say, That's a matter for the future. Who knows what will happen to the 2 clans in the end? That's right. Why did senior brother call me here? Oh, has there been any abnormalities in the Ling clan recently? No, there hasn't been any movement. Isn't it just that they weren't able to subdue the fire ape and even killed Yenyuan City's Mo Guang? Does Ling Zhengyi not know how to deal with Yenyuan City? Right now, he's racking his brains on how to pass through Shihuang town's transportation array. Then, are there any other abnormalities? Other abnormalities? It's nothing much, like Ling Zhengyi's niece Xue Xue. She's going to some sect to participate in the disciple selection? Of course, this was something that happened before coming to Shihuang town. Io, senior brother, what are you saying? Since you're asking me, why are you still hesitating? Could it be that you don't trust me anymore? Ling Chongya asked curiously. This, cough cough. Pu Chi coughed a few times and lowered his voice saying, Clan head said it clearly, this matter. It's fine as long as I know. But, if I don't tell you, how are you going to investigate? However, little brother, you have to keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything. Senior brother Pu Qi, don't worry, what do I do? How can I leak it so easily? Ling Chongya patted his chest and laughed. It's like this. Pu Qi recounted the incident where Pu Jinyuan's magic tool was sent flying by the fire ape. Although he didn't explain it clearly, he explained it clearly. What? Clan head's family heirloom magic tool was actually sent flying by the fire ape? How is this possible? Ling Chongya cried out involuntarily. At that time, clan head and Ling Zhengyi both used the magic tool to subdue the fire ape. Isn't this magic tool the fire ape's nemesis? How could it be sent flying by the fire ape instead? Pu Qi's face became anxious and he whispered, Little brother, lower your voice. Hee, senior brother, what's there to be afraid of? Aren't all the cultivators of the Flame Forest swamp heading towards the basin? Who would still be here? Ling Chongya said nonchalantly, but then his face became envious. That fire ape is a 5th-grade spiritual beast, comparable to the golden core stage. If I could use the magic tool to subdue it, wouldn't I be able to directly slap Ling Zhengyi to death? You could even slap Sun Yunzi to death. Pu Qi sneered. Clan head's cultivation is at the foundation establishment stage, and he couldn't even subdue it with the fire ape soul-capturing magic tool. What are you, a mere Qi refinement stage brat, dreaming about? You'd better hurry back and find out where Ling Zhengyi hid that magic tool. I'm not a direct disciple of Misty Mountain. How could I know such a secret? Besides, Ling Zhengyi took clan head's magic tool and refined it long ago. How could he have kept it until now? I don't know. Clan head knows that the magic tool hasn't been refined yet, so he only told me to ask you. Pu Qi shrugged. I understand. If there's any news, I'll immediately send 1,000 miles voice transmission to senior brother. Ling Chongya nodded and said, Then I'll take my leave. Go. Be careful. The family head is very appreciative of what you did in the Flame Forest Mountains. He will reward you handsomely. However, because our Flying Phoenix Ridge is one step ahead of Misty Mountain, he was afraid of exposing you, so he didn't let me bring you this time. Thank you for your kindness, clan head. I'll do anything for Flying Phoenix Ridge. Good. I'll definitely bring these words to clan head. Pu Qi said with a smile. Then I'll take my leave. In the past few days, I've received news from Shihuang Town that Yenyuan City has sent experts to keep watch. All cultivators who want to use the transportation array have to open all of their storage pouches and check them. I think that if Ling Zhengyi took clan head's magic tool, he'll definitely think of a way to bring it back. Let's hurry and take a look. I'll leave everything to you. Pu Qi cupped his hands and sent him off. Then, the two of them flew off in different directions. After they flew off for about half the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, Xiaohua came out from the vines not far away. He sensed the movements in his surroundings and also flew into the air to chase after Ling Chongya. Xiaohua flew in the air and thought to himself, Good heavens! What magic tool is this? It really is Flying Phoenix Ridge's family heirloom magic tool. And it's actually extraordinary. This Ling Zhengyi is really something. He only met me a few times and already gave me the magic tool. Of course, it's to avoid Pu Jinyuan, but isn't that too reckless? How did he know that I would definitely return it to him? However, this magic tool, it's actually some kind of soul-capturing magic tool that can subdue a 5th-grade fire ape? Damn it, since it's a fat piece of meat that's delivered itself to my doorstep, how can I just spit it out? Wait until I refine this magic tool and subdue the fire ape, then I'll kill everyone from 100 Herb Sect. Xiaohua thought as he flew. After flying for an hour, he suddenly stopped in the air. Io, how did I become so stupid? Needless to say, that Ling Zhengyi must have sent people to guard Shihuang Town's transportation array and wait for me to use it. Or maybe he's also sent people to wait for me at Yenyuan City's transportation array. How can I just walk right into their trap? Moreover, Yenyuan City actually wants to check my storage pouch. I can't just put Wuxia's corpse in the space behind my head, right? Oh, I forgot. I've been in a hurry these past few days and haven't made a coffin with Wuxia yet. While thinking, Xiaohua descended from the air and found a large, straight tree. He pushed it into a very rough coffin that was carved out using the flying sword talisman. After placing Wuxia's corpse inside, Xiaohua made up his mind. He definitely can't go to Shihuang town and naturally can't use the transportation array. Then he can only fly directly to Yenyuan City. Chapter 1452. A month later, in front of the city gates of Yenyuan City, a tall and thin cultivator with a cultivation of the middle fourth layer descended from the sky. He stood outside the city gates and calmly stared at Yenyuan City. This cultivator was Xianxia. Xianxia had already made up his mind not to use Shihuang town's teleportation array, and to rely solely on himself to fly to Yenyuan City. He was not in a hurry along the way. He cultivated during the day and flew at night. After consuming about 60 clean lotus pellets and a month of bitter cultivation, he finally raised his cultivation to the middle of the fourth layer of qi refining. Sigh, this cultivation is really not an ordinary level of difficulty. Xianxia looked at Yenyuan City in the distance and thought to himself, when I was in the second and third layer, I felt like I could easily break through. Why did it become so hard when I reached the fourth layer? If it's like this, then wouldn't it be even harder to reach the fifth layer and beyond? It seems like, even with the purifying lotus pills and Giji pills, it would still take a long time to reach the late stage of qi refining. I have to think of a way. AI, no matter what, I'm still alive. Since I'm alive, I can naturally cultivate. Wuxia. Even if she wants to cultivate, she won't have the chance. The city gates of Yenyuan City are still open and the cultivators entering and leaving are still bustling. But who would know that the female cultivator who came here a month ago is no longer alive? I should hurry and find someone to ask where Luyang is. Sending Wuxia's body back is the right thing to do. Wuxia only said that she could use Yenyuan City's transportation formation to return to Luyang. I wonder if there's a transportation formation in Luyang. Xianxia thought and was about to step forward, but just as he lifted his leg he hesitated. The disciples of Misty Mountain have already returned to Yenyuan City. That Ling Zhengyi's eyes and ears must be everywhere in Yenyuan City. If I go in, wouldn't I be walking right into a trap? After thinking for a moment, Xianxia looked around and saw that there was no one around. He took out the demonic robe and put it on. Only then did he dare to walk into Yenyuan City. Once Xianxia entered Yenyuan City, he didn't go anywhere. He headed straight for the teleportation array at the city's central plaza. At this time, the courtyard of the transmission array seemed to be a lot stricter than it was a month ago. Not only did the number of city guards in front of the gate double, there were also a lot more cultivators faintly standing by the side. Moreover, just as Xianxia walked to the side of the city guards, a few divine senses immediately swept over him, scrutinizing Xianxia from head to toe. Xiaohua's brows wrinkled slightly. How would they know who he was if he was dressed like a fan? What's the use of looking at it? Fellow Taoist, do you want to use the teleportation array? A city guard looked at Xianxia vigilantly and cupped his hands. This old man is going to use the teleportation formation. Do I need to make an appointment to register? Xianxia asked in a hoarse voice. Of course. The city guard said, however, today is not the same as before. You must take off your disguise and enter the teleportation formation with your original appearance. Why is that? Xiaohua's heart trembled as he asked curiously. This is a matter of Yenyuan City. Since the city lord has given the order, I can only comply. If you want to use the teleportation formation of Yenyuan City, you can only enter with your original appearance. Xianxia hesitated for a moment. At this time, a 7th stage qi refining cultivator came forward and handed a token to another city guard. He smiled and said, I am a disciple of the 7 Skills sect, currently working at the weaponry workshop. I have received orders from the shopkeeper to leave Yenyuan City. I hope fellow Taoist can accommodate me. Please wait a moment. The city guard took the token and poured his spiritual energy into it. He shook it twice on top of a round ball and handed it back. He smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, please. Many thanks. The cultivator took the token and walked straight in. Fellow Taoist, you don't need to make an appointment? Xianxia asked curiously. The city guard looked at Xianxia strangely and smiled. Every shop in Yenyuan City has a token issued by Yenyuan City. With this token, you can teleport without making an appointment. If fellow Taoist had this token, You wouldn't have to take me Huan. I see, I understand. Xiao Hua smiled and turned to leave. Where could he go to get this so-called token? Knowing it was the same as not knowing. Seems like I can only fly directly to Luyang. Xiao Hua made up his mind and began to inquire about Luyang's whereabouts. Fortunately, although Luyang was a small place, there were still people who knew about it. Xiao Hua only needed to drink a few cups of spirit wine in a restaurant and tip the waiter with a piece of low-grade spirit stone to clearly find out where Luyang was. However, when he found out where Luyang was, his brows furrowed even more. Luyang was a town, so it was further away than Shihuang town. There were no teleportation formations near Luyang town, so he could only go to a place called Linyu town and fly there directly. Between Yenyuan City and Linyu town, there was a dangerous place called the Sunrise Mountain Range. That place was extremely dangerous. If one was not a high-stage qi refining cultivator, it was impossible to fly through it safely. This is going to be difficult. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. If we want to pass through the Sunrise Mountain Range, we can only go around it. I'm afraid that this detour will take several months and who knows how many dangers there are. How about we don't rush to Luyang? It won't be too late to go after the commotion in Yenyuan City passes. Xiao Hua made up his mind. He drank a mouthful of spiritual wine and took out a low-grade spiritual stone to pay the bill. At this moment, he saw a cultivator coming in from outside the restaurant. Oh, isn't this shopkeeper Fu? You haven't been here for the past few days. When the waiter saw the cultivator, he hurriedly greeted him with a smile. Isn't this shopkeeper Fu from the Fu clan's talisman shop, Fu Yingmin? Xiao Hua saw clearly. I had some matters to attend to these past few days, so I didn't have time to come. Fu Yingmin smiled as she looked around. Her eyes swept past Xiao Hua's body, then she casually found a seat and sat down. Waiter, quickly bring 2 pots of your Lin Hua jade liquid. This poor Taoist has been missing it for the past few days. Look at what shopkeeper Fu said. If you like it, you can just ask the shop's disciples to come and get it. Why do you have to trouble yourself? As the waiter spoke, he trotted over and brought 2 jade bottles from the back. Fu Yingmin poured the spiritual wine from the jade bottle into a jade cup and took a sip. She smiled bitterly and said, My Fu clan's elders came over these past few days and selected a few disciples that they want to recruit. I carefully accompanied them. How could I be greedy for food? Hee. So the Fu clan's shop is recruiting disciples. The waiter smiled and said, This matter has been going on for many days. Why haven't you found anyone suitable? Isn't that right? I have also found more than 10 disciples. In addition to the ones I've found in the past few days, I'm afraid there are more than 20. But either their cultivation level is not high enough or their talisman crafting skills are not good enough. None of them are suitable. Fu Yingmin drank a few more cups before letting out a long sigh. She looked around and said in a low voice, If I can't recruit enough disciples for the Fu clan before I retire to the Fu clan, I'm afraid that the elder's position will fly away. Oh, then shopkeeper Fu will have to be more careful. The waiter served by the side and asked very considerately, There are so many cultivators coming and going in and out of Yenyuan City. Why haven't you met any of them? There are a few suitable ones, but they either think that my Fu clan is not strong enough or they have other things to do and don't have the time for now. The day is coming and I still can't find a suitable disciple to return to the Fu clan. This really makes I anxious. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. If he could join the Fu clan, he would definitely have to leave Yenyuan City in a short period of time. He just had to find an excuse to go to Luyang City and it would not take much time. Furthermore, if he joined the Fu clan, he could cultivate in peace and learn how to craft talismans. Wouldn't this be the best of both worlds? Therefore, Xiao Hua was not in a hurry to pay the bill. He sat nearby and slowly tasted the spirit wine while listening to the waiter and Fu Yingmin talk about the situation in Yenyuan City. It turned out that after the huge commotion in the Flaming Forest Marsh attracted the attention of Shihuang town, many cultivators went to check it out. At the same time, the news spread extremely quickly, and many cultivators came to Shihuang town through the transportation array in Yenyuan City and other places. The city guards of Yenyuan City naturally received the news and went to Shihuang town. However, Mo Guang, who was in charge of the transportation array, was killed by the fire ape. Without Mo Guang's control of the transportation array, one could only enter and not leave. This naturally caused the city lord of Yenyuan City to be furious, and he sent many city guards, elders and worshippers to Shihuang town. Fellow Taoist, please inform him on my behalf. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. Oh, is that so? Fellow Taoist, this way please. The waiter smiled and raised his hand to invite Xiaohua to the second floor. Chapter 1453. Not long after, Fu Yingmin came down from the third floor. She was slightly stunned when she saw Xiaohua. Then, she came to her senses and looked him up and down with a strange look in her eyes. Shopkeeper Fu, do you still remember I? Xiaohua stepped forward and cupped his hands in greeting. Haha, fellow Taoist Xiao, please take a seat. It's only been a month since we last met. How could I forget? Fu Yingmin smiled and returned the greeting. She walked to a chair and sat down. Then she looked at Xiaohua with interest and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, a month ago, you were only in the early fourth layer of the qi refining realm. In such a short time you actually reached the middle fourth layer of the qi refining realm. This cultivation speed really makes me feel ashamed. Shopkeeper Fu is joking. Xiaohua sat down with a smile and said, This junior just had some good fortune in the past month. This little bit of cultivation. Haha, compared to the seniors, it's really not enough. It's nothing but a joke. Shopkeeper Fu didn't ask what kind of good fortune Xiaohua had. He took a sip of tea and asked, Then, fellow Taoist Xiao, why did you come to my shop this time? Seeing that Shopkeeper Fu asked directly, Xiaohua didn't hide it anymore. He smiled and said, This junior did get some benefits during this time, but after thinking about it, being a loose cultivator is really difficult. I lack cultivation methods and medicinal pills. Moreover, I don't have any seniors to guide me. Therefore, I feel that what Shopkeeper Fu said last time is reasonable. Therefore, I want to join the Fu clan, to practice the art of making talismans and become a talisman master. Haha, it's rare that fellow Taoist Xiao can understand. This old man is very gratified. Shopkeeper Fu obviously understood the purpose of Xiaohua's visit. He didn't seem surprised and said with a smile, However, in the past month, many loose cultivators have come to this old man's shop. Their aptitudes are also very good. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you've come a little late. It can't be. Shopkeeper Fu, didn't you say that it's suitable for anyone to come within half a year? Xiaohua asked anxiously. That was then and this is now. I didn't expect that my Fu clan's talisman crafting techniques would be so popular. In just a few days, more than 10 fellow Taoists have come. It's really tiring for me to select them one by one. I owe Shopkeeper Fu this matter. I'll have to trouble you a lot. If this junior is able to join the Fu clan to practice the art of talisman crafting, I will definitely remember Shopkeeper Fu's kindness. Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, AI, who asked this old man to promise you that day? I can only reluctantly put in a few good words for you in front of the elders. Fu Yingmin sighed and said, Elder? Xiaohua pretended to be surprised. Let me tell you, fellow cultivator Xiao, our Fu clan's guest elder, Lu Yun, is in charge of this election. She'll be in Yenyuan City during this period of time. If you can win her favor, joining our Fu clan will be a piece of cake. Fu Yingmin said with a smile. Then I'll have to rely on Senior Fu to deal with him. Xiaohua said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please follow this old man. Fu Yingmin stood up and said. However, just as Fu Yingmin was about to take a step, he suddenly thought of something and turned his head and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, are you planning to join our Fu clan to become a talisman crafting master? Or are you planning to become a disciple? Xiaohua was confused and asked, what's the difference? Look at this old man, I'm really getting old. Previously, fellow Taoist Xiao didn't agree to join our Fu clan, so this old man forgot to explain this matter. Fu Yingmin slapped his forehead and said, It just so happens that Elder Lu Yun lives in the backyard. This old man will take you there and take the opportunity to explain it to you. Senior Fu, please. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said. Thus, Xiao Hua followed Fu Yingmin down to the second floor and exited from a corner door on the first floor. They walked towards a small courtyard behind the building. During this process, Fu Yingmin explained the difference between a talisman crafting master and a disciple. Just as Wuxia said, the Fu clan first divided their disciples into two types. One was specialized in cultivation, and the other was specialized in crafting talismans. The Fu clan's descendants were specially trained according to their aptitude when they were still young. The disciples who specialized in cultivation were the same as the disciples of the cultivation sections. As long as they reached a certain level of cultivation, they would receive the corresponding cultivation techniques and elixirs. They would also receive guidance from the Fu clan seniors with profound cultivation. As for the disciples who specialized in crafting talismans, they would also start from the simplest talisman crafting techniques and gradually delve deeper. As long as it was possible, the Fu clan would provide them with high-grade talismans for them to practice. As for the disciples who did not share the surname of the Fu clan, they were generally classified as disciples who specialized in crafting talismans. These disciples were further divided into two types. One was the outer circle of talisman crafting masters, and the other was the disciple who specialized in crafting talismans. The so-called disciple who specialized in crafting talismans was the disciple who could inherit the techniques of crafting talismans in the Fu clan. This type of disciple could practice profound talisman crafting techniques, and they could even enter the ranks of the disciples who specialized in cultivating talismans. Of course, there was a price to pay, and that was to change their surname to Fu. For these disciples, the Fu clan would betroth some of the more beautiful women in the clan to them, and their descendants would naturally become the direct disciples of the Fu clan. Correspondingly, the outer circle of talisman crafting masters could only practice the art of crafting talismans. Moreover, after making a corresponding contribution to the Fu clan, they would be able to practice higher-level talisman crafting techniques. As for the Fu clan's cultivation techniques? Perhaps those below the 4th level of qi refining could practice it, but those above the 5th level were practically impossible. Because of this, another strange phenomenon occurred. Since they could not practice higher-level cultivation techniques, then their talisman crafting skills would not be profound. The outer circle of talisman crafting masters could only leave the Fu clan, or join the ranks of the disciples in order to learn higher-level cultivation techniques. Of course, the Fu clan's way of crafting talismans was unique. There were many cultivators who already practiced cultivation techniques that joined the Fu clan to become talisman crafting masters and practice the art of crafting talismans. The goal of these cultivators was to become a guest elder of the Fu clan. These guest elders were also known as guest elders. They were different from the elders of the Fu clan. They could work for the Fu clan and craft talismans, but they would not risk their lives for the Fu clan. The Fu clan would also open up their talisman crafting techniques to these guest elders. Elder Lu Yun, who was currently in the backyard of the Fu clan's shop, was one of these guest elders. After listening to Fu Yingmin's explanation, Xiao Hua finally understood why he was so impetuous. He only wanted to use this opportunity to join the Fu clan to learn the art of crafting talismans, and also use this opportunity to leave Yenyuan City. However, he never thought that the price he had to pay for joining the Fu clan was not small. He even had to change his surname to Fu. Fu Hua, why does it sound so bad? Xiao Hua naturally did not want to change his surname. He could only cup his hands and say, Junior, thanks Senior Fu for the explanation. Junior will first become a talisman crafting master and contribute to the Fu clan. I will practice some talisman crafting techniques first. Fu Yingmin did not seem surprised and said with a smile, I understand fellow Taoist Zhao's thoughts. After all, I also went through this in the past. Xiao Hua was stunned and said, Senior Fu is also not of the Fu clan's bloodline. Haha, if I was a direct descendant of the Fu clan, would I have been sent to Yenyuan City? Fu Yingmin said with a smile. However, if fellow Taoist Xiao wants to improve his cultivation or talisman crafting techniques, it is better for you to become a disciple of the Fu clan. Only a disciple of the Fu clan can receive the true teachings of the Fu clan. Hee. The ladies of the Fu clan are also very good. Xiao Hua was stunned and his stiff face twitched a few times. He looked at Fu Yingmin's smiling face and did not know what to say. Haha, young man, what's there to be embarrassed about? Which lady of the Fu clan do you fancy? Just tell me. No matter what, you were selected by me. If you can become outstanding, I will also be proud. Fu Yingmin laughed again. Xiao Hua muttered a few words. It was unknown whether he was thanking Fu Yingmin or something else. The two of them then went to the backyard. Shopkeeper Fu, is there a problem? Before Fu Yingmin could speak, a woman's voice came from a small building in the courtyard. The small building was very exquisite. It was under a luxuriant flowering tree. There were many thumb-sized light purple xiaohua blooming on the tree, emitting a simple but elegant fragrance. This fragrance and the exquisiteness of the small building complemented each other very well. It was very interesting. Reporting to Elder, I have brought another loose cultivator who wants to join the Fu clan. I hope that Elder can assess him. Thank you for your hard work, Shopkeeper Fu. The voice was somewhat lazy, but also somewhat crisp and pleasant to the ear. How should I address this fellow Taoist? Does he meet the requirements of my Fu clan? Junior's name is Xiao Hua. I can refine fireball talismans and icicle talismans. I wonder if I can join the Fu clan? Xiao Hua looked at Fu Yingmin and stepped forward with cupped hands. A woman in her 50s or 60s slowly walked out of the small building. Her brows were slightly wrinkled. She looked up and down at Xiao Hua and said unhappily, although fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation is at the 4th level of qi refining, but this level of cultivation is really nothing in my Fu clan. And you can only refine low-level fireball talismans and icicle talismans. This is still far from the requirements of my Fu clan. Elder Lu, Fu Yingmin at the side said with a smile, fellow Taoist Xiao is a loose cultivator. It is really rare for him to reach the middle level of the 4th level of qi refining at such a young age. Moreover, fellow Taoist Xiao came to the shop a month ago. At that time, he was only at the early level of the 4th level of qi refining. It has only been a few dozen days, but he can reach the middle level of the 4th level of qi refining. Of course, his aptitude is commendable. Even if he can only refine low-level talismans, there is still a lot of room for future development. This old man thinks that he still meets the requirements. Whether he meets the requirements or not, that is up to this elder to decide. Shopkeeper Fu, you should be more careful with your words. Lu Yun said with a cold smile. How? Elder Lu is the elder in charge of this examination. This old man is just afraid that my Fu clan will lose a pillar of talent. That is why I recommended him. Fu Yingmin glanced at Lu Yun and said, Xiao Hua, refine an icicle talisman and let this elder take a look. Lu Yun said indifferently. This icicle talisman, Xiao Hua naturally knew how to refine it. However, he used his hands and not a talisman brush. When he heard this, he could only take out a talisman brush, talisman paper, and talisman ink. He thought about the process of drawing the icicle talisman in his heart. He took out the talisman brush, slowly activated his magic power, dipped it in talisman ink, and started drawing on the talisman paper. Chapter 1454. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's cultivation was deep at this moment. His magic power was deep, and his control of magic power was becoming more and more precise. So, even though he hadn't succeeded in refining the icicle talisman with the talisman brush in the past, he actually succeeded in one try today. It was a very successful refinement. Yes, not bad. Although fellow Taoist Zhao's strokes were a bit jerky, his control of magic power was smooth. He also remembered the runes clearly. Although the icicle talisman he refined was low grade, it was still valuable. Fu Yingmin clapped her hands and praised. Compared to the ones from a few days ago, it is indeed much better. Lu Yun sneered. But if you want to join the Fu clan. All right, Xiao Hua. Do you want to be a disciple or a peripheral talisman master? Junior hopes to be a peripheral talisman master. Xiao Hua smiled. Oh, so it's like that. Lu Yun snorted and said, then you can go back. Why? Xiao Hua was surprised. Junior's icicle talisman. Didn't I successfully refine it? Lu Yun was a bit impatient and waved her hand. You are a loose cultivator at the 4th level of qi refining. Being able to refine a low-grade icicle talisman is indeed commendable. If your cultivation level increases, you will definitely be able to refine a middle-grade or even a high-grade icicle talisman. But don't forget that the reason why you can't refine a middle-grade icicle talisman is because your cultivation level is too low. As a loose cultivator, I'm afraid you only have a 4th level Qi refining cultivation technique, right? You joined the Fu clan for a cultivation technique, right? But the peripheral talisman masters of the Fu clan can at most teach 5th level Qi refining cultivation techniques. Even if you worked hard for the Fu clan for many years and refined many icicle talismans, but can you refine a high-grade icicle talisman? Rather than that, what's the point of joining the Fu clan? Elder Lu Yun's words were indeed reasonable. However, Fu Yingmin's expression changed again and she said with a smile, as a loose cultivator, living a difficult life in the cultivation world, how can it be as stable as the Fu clan? Perhaps fellow Taoist Xiao also has the same idea? No matter what, Xiao Hua can only refine a low-grade icicle talisman. He does not meet the requirements. Lu Yun's expression did not change as she said indifferently. Xiao Hua hurriedly added, reporting to Elder Lu, this junior also knows how to refine fireball talismans. That's right. Xiao Hua is able to refine both the icicle talisman and the fireball talisman. Being able to refine 2 types of yellow talismans at the same time is also rare and commendable. Fu Yingmin also echoed. TSK. Low-level yellow talismans. What's the point of refining 5 of them? Lu Yun said disdainfully. Xiao Hua glanced at Fu Yingmin and didn't say anything else. He picked up the talisman brush and circulated his Fa Li. He dipped it in the talisman ink and started to draw the fireball talisman on the talisman paper. Lu Yun snorted and coldly looked at him. However, Xiao Hua's brush flew like it was flying. He was extremely skilled and controlled his Fa Li very well. When a ka sound rang out and a middle-grade fireball talisman was successfully refined in midair, Lu Yun's eyes unconsciously flashed with a trace of astonishment. Elder Lu, I wonder if this middle-grade fireball talisman meets the requirements? Xiao Hua handed over the newly refined fireball talisman and asked with a smile. Lu Yun took it and flipped it over a few times. She nodded and said, since this fireball talisman is a middle-grade talisman, it's also suitable. You can enter the Fu clan. However, if it's only this, hee. Lu Yun didn't continue speaking. She handed the fireball talisman to Fu Yingmin and said, congratulations shopkeeper Fu. You finally completed this year's mission. Hee. Many thanks for Elder Lu's help. Fu Yingmin cupped his hands and smiled. Then he said to Xiao Hua, why aren't you thanking Elder Lu? Xiao Hua also cupped his hands. Thank you, Elder Lu. No need to thank me. Since you've chosen this path, then you must have a certain level of awareness. Either you can increase your cultivation like I, or you can be like shopkeeper Fu. Otherwise, you'll also have a mediocre life. Lu Yun waved her hand and said indifferently. Xiao Hua's heart moved. He smiled and said, other than the fireball talisman and icicle talisman, this junior has also practiced a type of imprisonment talisman. What? You can also refine imprisonment talismans? Fu Yingmin's face showed joy. She didn't wait for Xiao Hua to finish speaking and immediately asked. Xiao Hua smiled and shook his head. Elder Fu really thinks too highly of this junior. This junior has obtained an incomplete method to refine imprisonment talismans. However, because I don't have the method to write the talisman, I haven't been able to successfully practice it. Refine it and let me see. Lu Yun was also interested. There was a trace of a smile at the corner of her mouth. Xiao Hua didn't hold back. He dipped the talisman brush in talisman ink and drew the imprisonment talisman on the talisman paper. There was nothing to say about the drawing of the talisman and the control of his magic power. Xiao Hua had already done it extremely well. However, when he was writing on the talisman paper flickered slightly. Great. Elder Lu Yun at the side clapped her hands and said, Xiao Hua, I have to praise you. The fireball talisman and icicle talisman are just low-grade yellow talismans. If you have the method to refine them and have profound magic power, it would be easy to refine them. However, this imprisonment talisman is a high-grade yellow talisman. Without a deep understanding of talisman crafting, without a profound cultivation, and without a long period of cultivation, it would be impossible to successfully refine it. However, from I's observation, the method you use to refine the imprisonment talisman is the same as the method you use to refine the fireball talisman and icicle talisman. Obviously, you have been immersed in it for many years. However, your cultivation isn't profound. I presume that you haven't received guidance from an experienced master like my Fu clan. For you to be able to refine this imprisonment talisman to this extent, it is really somewhat inconceivable. The imprisonment talisman is a high-grade yellow talisman. In my Fu clan, only a high-grade talisman master can refine it. If Xiaohua can refine it. Hee. Fu Yingmin's eyes narrowed into slits. Lu Yun chuckled and nodded. I also have the same intention. Let the clan head take out the method to refine the imprisonment talisman and let Xiaohua refine it. However, the imprisonment talisman is a high-grade yellow talisman. I'm afraid that only imparting disciples can get it, right? Fu Yingmin suddenly hesitated. Xiaohua only wants to be a peripheral talisman master. This is a bit difficult. These are matters for the clan head to worry about. Why are you and I thinking about this? Lu Yun smiled and patted her hand. From the storage bag at her waist, she took out a token and handed it to Fu Yingmin. Let Xiaohua take I's token back to Jianghu Mountain. I will send Xiaohua's situation to the clan head and let him have a headache. Fu Yingmin smiled and took it, nodding. I will do as Elder Lu says. Xiaohua, welcome to the Fu clan. Your cultivation is a bit shallow, but you still have talent in the art of talisman making. In the future, if you cultivate diligently, you will definitely be like I and become a guest elder. Thank you, Elder Lu, for your encouragement. Junior will definitely work hard. Xiaohua humbly bowed. Haha, good. Lu Yun helped Xiaohua up and said to Fu Yingmin, I have finished my business here. I still have to rush to other places and will leave tomorrow morning. In addition, you should quickly arrange Xiaohua's matter. If he can refine the imprisonment talisman earlier, my Fu clan will have one more arm. Okay, I will immediately arrange it. Fu Yingmin smiled and left the small courtyard with Xiaohua. When they sat down on the second floor, Fu Yingmin clapped her hands and said, Xiaohua, I didn't expect that you would be able to refine the imprisonment talisman. Senior Fu, Junior hasn't successfully refined the imprisonment talisman yet? How can you say that I can refine it? Xiaohua quickly waved his hand. Hee, I can tell that you haven't been taught by a talisman master. Fu Yingmin smiled and said, the writing method of the talisman is just a technique to control the magic power. It can control the magic power in the talisman ink and condense it. It can't be considered too profound. The difficulty of refining the imprisonment talisman lies in the talisman inscriptions and the understanding of the talisman crafting. When I practiced refining the imprisonment talisman, I had to memorize the talisman inscriptions for 2 whole years. Even so, when I refine the imprisonment talisman now, I only have a 30% chance of success. So little? Xiaohua frowned. He rarely failed in refining. These are all distant words. Let's not talk about them first. Fu Yingmin waved her hand and handed over the keepsake Lu Yun gave to Xiaohua and asked, Xiaohua, when are you going to Jianghu Mountain? Xiaohua heard and probed. Jianghu Mountain is where the Fu clan is located? Where is it? Ha. Fu Yingmin laughed loudly and said, Xiaohua, you are making me laugh to death. Jianghu Mountain is where the Fu clan is located. Since you know how to refine yellow talismans, how can you not know where the famous talisman crafting family in Xi is? I'm ashamed, Xiaohua blushed with shame. Since you don't know where Jianghu Mountain is, then it's fine. I will send a disciple to send you there. Don't, Xiaohua quickly said. Junior still has some matters to attend to. I want to take care of them first before going to Jianghu Mountain. Then, how long do you need? Fu Yingmin was somewhat displeased. Hee, but Senior knows that if I use the teleportation array, I'm afraid it will only take 1 or 2 days. Where are you going? Fu Yingmin asked. Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and said, Linyu Town. Linyu Town? Fu Yingmin showed a strange smile and nodded. You really don't know where Jianghu Mountain is? Jinhua Mountain is in Linyu Town? Xiaohua was stunned. Hee, of course not. Fu Yingmin shook his head and stood up. Xiaohua, rest in the shop for 2 days. After I send Elder Lu away, I will arrange for you to go back to Jinhua Mountain. I will listen to Senior's arrangements. Xiaohua bowed and sent Fu Yingmin down to the 2nd floor. 3 days later, Xiaohua walked out of the Fu Clan store and cupped his hands to bid farewell to Fu Yingmin, who had escorted him to the door. He then walked towards the teleportation array in Yenyuan City. After walking for a while and seeing that there wasn't anyone around, he put on his camouflage robe and walked forward leisurely. As he walked, he thought to himself, what a coincidence. There are 2 teleportation arrays in Jinhua Mountain, and there are 2 different paths. Linyu Town is actually one of the choices. Even though it's a little far, it's still on the way. Chapter 1455. When Xiaohua arrived at the teleportation array, the courtyard was as deserted as it was a few days ago. Without waiting for Xiaohua to approach, several city guards focused their attention on Xiaohua. Xiaohua was not nervous at all. He slowly walked in front of a city guard and raised his hand. He said in a low voice, I am a talisman maker from the Fu clan. I want to use the teleportation array to return to the Golden Mountain. Fu clan's shop? The city guard's expression didn't change. He took Xiaohua's token and placed it on his own artifact to examine it. After a while he returned the token to Xiaohua and said with a smile, only your Fu clan is so cautious. A few days ago, an elder came and was also bewitched. Today he's bewitched again. Who can rob your Fu clan? Xiaohua sneered, I have my reasons for being bewitched. Can't your Yen Abyss City let me wear it? Io, Senior. Please calm down. This junior is only familiar with Fu Laosher and often goes to your shop. That's why I said it. Don't blame me, don't blame me. The city guard knew he misspoke and quickly apologized. Fu Laosher? Xiaohua was stunned. Hee, it's the talisman money. The city guard smiled. Senior might not know the disciple in the shop. Oh, Xiaohua did not comment. Senior, please. The city guard raised his hand and invited Xiaohua in. Xiaohua was secretly happy. Just as he was about to take a step, he heard someone shout, Fellow Taoist, please wait. Xiaohua was shocked and thought, could it be that I was discovered by the people of the Misty Mountain? Just as he turned around to look in astonishment, he discovered that the ones who spoke were several city guards. He saw several city guards holding magic tools and rushing behind Xiaohua, blocking a cultivator who was flying low in the air. The cultivator was also bewitched. His face and cultivation could not be seen clearly. When he saw the city gods blocking him, he shouted, How dare you! I have urgent matters to attend to in Linyu Town. Get out of my way! Senior, please wait a moment. After I beat this guy up, I will bring you there. The city guard next to Xiaohua apologized and quickly walked over. He cupped his hands and said, Senior, this one greets you. What are you talking about? Get out of the way. I'm in a hurry. The cultivator said coldly. Senior, there are some changes to the teleportation array in Yenyuan City. The city lord has instructed that if you want to use the teleportation array, you must use your real identity. The city guard explained politely. What about him? That cultivator pointed at Xiaohua's location. Damn it! Why am I so unlucky? Xiaohua silently cursed. However, he could only stand still and not move. Oh, this senior is a talisman crafting master of the Fu Clan's shop. He has an identity token issued to the Fu Clan by Yenyuan City which can prove his identity. The guard smiled apologetically and said, If senior also has an identity token, you can show it to me for inspection. Where is Bien Hui? The cultivator thought for a moment and suddenly asked, Uncle Bien? The guard was stunned for a moment. He smiled even more respectfully and said, It is because of the changes in Yenyuan City that Uncle Bien went out and is not in Yenyuan City for the time being. Junior is also helpless. If Senior doesn't want to take off the bewildering dishwashing, Senior should go to the City Lord's mansion and ask for a token from the City Lord. Nonsense. The cultivator stomped his foot and said angrily, How would I dare to trouble City Lord Jiang for such a small matter? Then, the cultivator raised his head and scanned the surroundings with his spiritual sense. He said coldly, "I don't care about the cultivators of Yenyuan City. If the others don't want to cause trouble, quickly withdraw your spiritual sense. If this old man's whereabouts are leaked, don't blame my Imperial Thunder Sect for not giving everyone face." The Imperial Thunder Sect's reputation was indeed useful. The spiritual sense that had been roaming around the cultivator immediately withdrew. The cultivator had no choice but to take off the bewildering dishwashing, revealing a middle-aged cultivator in his 40s with a medium build who was in the late stage of foundation establishment. Seeing the resentment on the cultivator's face, the guard didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly raised his hand and said, "Senior, please." The late-stage foundation establishment cultivator snorted through his nose and walked in front of Xianxia. He scanned Xianxia with his divine sense, and there was a strange expression on his face. However, he only glanced at Xianxia once more before raising his head and walking past him. "Senior, sorry for making you wait. Senior, please." The guard raised his hand and invited Xianxia in. "It's fine." Seeing that the late-stage foundation establishment cultivator was forced to take off the bewildering dishwashing, Xianxia secretly rejoiced. If it wasn't for the Fu clan's identity token, how could he enter with the bewildering dishwashing? "Senior, are you still going to Shallow Language City?" The guard asked Xianxia in a low voice as he walked. Shallow Language City was the other teleportation formation to Jianghu Mountain. It was slightly closer to Jianghu Mountain and was often used by Fu clan disciples. "No, this old man is going to Rain Town today," Xianxia shook his head. The guard didn't say anything, but the foundation establishment cultivator in front of him turned around and looked at Xianxia coldly. He said, "Why are you going to Rain Town?" "Naturally, I'm going to use Rain Town's teleportation formation to go to Jade Bamboo Mountain. Why do you think I can go there?" Xianxia was unhappy. He knew that this cultivator couldn't see his cultivation, so he mustered up his courage and said, "Humph." Seeing this, the cultivator sneered. The Fu clan's patriarch is only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. How high can a talisman master like you be? Even if you're a guest elder. You're only in the middle stage of foundation establishment at most. You actually dare to fool around in front of me? Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart trembled. He knew this wasn't good. Of course, he was so focused on pretending to be a senior that he forgot this detail. However, at this moment, Xiaohua could only muster up his courage and say with a smile, "I don't seem to have anything to do with you, fellow Taoist. I'm just passing by Rain Town. It has nothing to do with fellow Taoist's urgent matter, and I don't have any intention of fooling around in front of you." Xiaohua's words were actually soft. How could that cultivator not hear it? I hope so. That cultivator seemed to really have something important to do. He ignored Xiaohua and quickly walked inside. After entering the teleportation formation, Xiaohua was a bit hesitant. That cultivator wouldn't suddenly attack in Yenyuan City, but who knew if he would suddenly attack in Rain Town? "What are you doing? Why are you dawdling?" That cultivator was already standing in the teleportation formation. His face was a bit impatient as he scolded, "This old man isn't someone without self-restraint. I won't attack just because of a few words from you. If you had nothing to do with this old man, I wouldn't have bothered with you." That cultivator seemed to have seen through Xiaohua's thoughts and urged him. Xiaohua was a bit helpless, but then he thought about it. His real identity was just a small fourth-layer qi refining cultivator. How could a late-stage foundation establishment senior lower himself to his level? At worst, he would just go to Rain Town and say a few words to him. After Xiaohua stepped into the teleportation formation, the cultivator of Yenyuan City activated it. A flash of light appeared and Xiaohua felt another wave of dizziness. When he opened his eyes again, he saw the same teleportation formation as Shihuang Town. There were also a few Yenyuan City disciples and city guards on the side. In front of him was also a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. However, this cultivator didn't seem to be as friendly as Mo Guang. He only looked from afar and didn't come forward. I didn't expect fellow Taoist to also be a foundation establishment cultivator? The cultivator who came with Xiaohua looked at Xiaohua and said curiously, "Fu clan's development these past few years can be considered quite good." I wouldn't dare. How can this junior's cultivation be compared to senior's? This junior is only wearing the bewildering dishwashing because of difficulties. Please forgive me for any inappropriateness. Senior. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, the cultivator's eyes revealed even more curiosity. However, the cultivator didn't beat around the bush and said, "Come with this old man." I'll listen to senior's instructions. Xiao Hua could only bite the bullet and say. When they came out of the teleportation formation, there was a large expanse of lush forest outside. Fine drizzles floated down from the sky, but it couldn't wet their clothes. Instead, it washed the entire blue sky and green trees until they were green and glistening. Let's go. Once they came out of the teleportation formation, the cultivator didn't say anything else and waved his hand, telling Xiao Hua to fly with him. This is bad. Could it be? Xiao Hua was worried. Fortunately, they only flew slowly for the time it took to smoke a cigarette. When they arrived at the foot of a mountain, the cultivator stopped and turned his head, saying, "This old man came here for some important matters. I have to be careful. Fellow Taoist, please take down the bewildering dishwashing and let this old man see your true face." Xiao Hua was helpless. Chapter 1456. Is this the place where Wuxia grew up? Xiao Hua had a very good impression of Wuxia, a female cultivator who had both perseverance and endured humiliation. Looking at this small town with beautiful mountains and limpid waters, he couldn't help but feel a trace of curiosity. Descending from midair, Xiao Hua walked on a rather wide road and slowly walked towards the small town. Outside the small town were some strange stone sculptures and rockery. The stone sculptures were in all kinds of strange shapes. There were old cows with their heads down plowing the fields, village women with their breasts exposed while nursing their children, and even a group of children of all shapes and sizes. They were either holding slingshots, branches, or little squirrels in their hands as they walked forward happily. The rockery was also strange. Some were big, some were small, some were tall, some were short, some were entwined with vines, some had flowing water. Before even entering the town, Xiao Hua was already attracted by these things that he had never seen before. "Young man, is this your first time in my Luyang town?" A gentle voice sounded from beside a stone statue lying on the ground and looking up at the sky. When Xiao Hua turned his head to look, he saw an old man about 60 years old with a face full of hardships. He held a pipe in his hand and slowly stood up from beside the stone statue. "Greetings, old man." That old man admittedly didn't have any cultivation and looked like an ordinary farmer. However, Xiao Hua still cupped his hands in greeting and said, This humble one has indeed come to Luyang town for the first time." "Oh, are you looking for someone? Or are you just passing by?" That old man took a puff of his pipe and blew out a faint cloud of smoke from his mouth and nose. He asked very casually. Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Even if I'm looking for someone, I'm also just passing by." Then, he looked around and asked, "May I know why there are so many stone statues and rockery placed outside Luyang town? Some of the towns I've been to didn't have such decorations." "Hey, young man, you don't sound very old. The roads you've walked and the places you've been to are quite a few," the old man said with a smile. "Then, what do you think of these stone sculptures? What do you think of Luyang town?" These stone carvings are vivid and lifelike, recording many of the various forms of the secular world. You might not feel anything when you look at them normally, but if you look at them carefully, you will find that there is a deep meaning behind them. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "Just like in an ordinary place, the happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy of farming are all reflected, the birth, old age, sickness, and death of people are all displayed." "Ah, young man, could it be that you're looking for Lu Yang's Kai clan?" The old man was shocked and asked in a low voice. "Sir, I am indeed here to look for the Kai family." "I wonder how Elder can tell?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. "You can tell? Hee, young man, look at this old man's eyes. How can this old man see anything?" The old man was still laughing. Xiao Hua took a closer look. Sure enough, although the old man's eyes were open, his eyes were lifeless. There was no expression at all, not even a trace of movement. This old man was actually blind. Elder is wise, to actually be able to find clues from Ai's voice. I truly admire you. Xiaohua praised with a smile. It's nothing much. Normally, when people see this old man's stone carvings, they would be affected by the strangeness on the surface. Who would be able to see the inner meaning behind these stone carvings? Only an expert like Senior Immortal would be able to truly understand what is inside. These were all carved by Elder. Xiaohua asked in disbelief. Exactly. I remember when this old man was 42 years old, I met with a great disaster. I couldn't see, couldn't do anything, and was extremely dispirited. However, the people of this town were extremely kind and helped this old man in all aspects, giving this old man hope to continue living. The old man raised his head and looked into the distance. His emotionless eyes seemed to have spirit. This old man was originally a stonemason, and didn't have anything to repay the people of this town. Thus, I used 20 years to slowly carve these things. 20 years? Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air and said in shock. You still can't see these. How did you complete them? Nothing else but perseverance. The old man waved his hand and said with a smile. Immortal Elder is a cultivator, how could you possibly ask such a question? This old man only carved some stones, while Immortal Elder went against the will of the heavens and pursued the path of immortality. Isn't that the word perseverance? Although these words were simple, in Xiaohua's ears, it was as if he was enlightened. Ever since he entered the middle stage of the fourth layer of qi refining, his progress had been somewhat slow. Unconsciously, he became anxious and wanted to find a way to increase his cultivation. Now that he heard the old man's words, he suddenly realized that although his cultivation was increasing slowly, it was still increasing after all. It was unknown how many times better than when his cultivation didn't increase at all in Shanghuaming. In fact, compared to Wuxia, it was unknown how many times better. Right now, he already had medicinal pills, top-grade spirit stones, and a complete cultivation method for the qi refining realm. As long as he persevered, how could he not reach the peak of qi refining? Even a blind old man could use 20 years to complete something that was difficult for a cultivator. So why couldn't he use 20 years to complete his qi refining cultivation? Xiaohua even felt that joining the Fu clan wasn't a very good choice. Thank you for your reminder, Elder. I have benefited greatly from it. Xiaohua bowed to the ground. With a wave of his hand, he took out a top-grade parasol pill and handed it over with a smile. Old Sir's words are wise words that allowed this poor Taoist to have an epiphany. This is this poor Taoist's precious medicinal pill. If there is anything wrong with Old Sir's body, you can take it. The old man was greatly surprised and quickly waved his hand. This old man was just casually chatting with someone. These words have been said to almost everyone who came here. Immortal Elder isn't the first. This old man is ashamed to accept this kind of immortal pill. I can't accept it. I can't accept it. Grandpa. At this moment, a childish and clear voice rang out. From behind a stone sculpture in the distance, a 7 or 8-year-old girl came out. The girl was somewhat thin and wasn't very tall, but her eyes were beautiful. From afar she shouted, Grandpa, are you blindly chatting with others again? Mayor, how could I? This is the Immortal Elder from the Kai clan. Quickly come and greet him. The old man looked at the girl and smiled kindly. Then he said to Xiaohua, This is an orphan that this old man picked up a few years ago. I have been raising her by my side. Mayor greets Elder Immortal Elder. Mayor bounced over to the old man. She first pulled on the old man's sleeve, then looked at Xiaohua. Her eyes looked at Xiaohua's young face a few times before she curiously called out. Immortal Elder is Immortal Elder. What elder brother? The old man said strangely. That's right. This Immortal Elder looks like an elder brother. He looks even younger than the Kai clan's elder sister. If Mayor doesn't call him elder brother, what should Mayor call him? Although Mayor was a little shy, she still argued. Immortal Elder, please don't blame Mayor. Mayor hasn't seen much of the world. The old man said with a smile. Look at Elder, Mayor didn't say anything wrong. What's there to blame? Xiaohua said with a smile. It's good that Immortal Elder doesn't blame me. The old man nodded his head. It's rare for Immortal Elder to accompany this old man and talk so much. This Immortal Elder wants to go to the Kai clan. You take Immortal Elder there. Me. Maya was stunned and said, Immortal Elder's home is very far from here. Only went with elder sister's servant. Going by myself is impossible. The old man took out a few copper coins from his sleeve and said, Find a donkey cart or something and let them take you there. Then I'll go by myself. Grandpa, this money is for tomorrow's meal. Mayor said carefully. Xiaohua smiled and said, Elder, don't worry. I will let Mayor lead the way. Naturally, I will pay for the cart. The old man felt that his thoughts were seen through by Xiaohua. He was a little embarrassed and said in a low voice, Listen to Immortal Elder's orders and serve Immortal Elder well. Yes, Grandpa. Don't worry. Big brother Immortal Elder. Let's go this way. Mayor didn't understand the old man's meaning, but she still obediently replied. Elder, let's part here. I'm leaving. Xiaohua bowed and saluted, then followed Mayor into the town. Immortal Elder. Take care. The old man said in a low voice. His lifeless eyes looked at the direction Xiaohua was walking in. It was unknown what he was thinking. Are you really Immortal Elder? Mayor walked in front for a while. Seeing that they were about to enter the town, she couldn't help but turn her head and ask. Don't I look like one? Xiaohua rubbed his nose and lowered his head to look at his own Taoist robe. Looking at your clothes, you do look like one. However, although Elder Sister Fairy is as young and amiable as you, Elder Sister Fairy has never saluted Grandpa. That means that everyone in the town salutes Elder Sister Fairy. Is that so? Xiaohua secretly laughed. He really didn't know why Mayor's observation was so detailed. Maybe everyone is different. I feel that your grandpa is very amazing. That's why I saluted him. That's right. Grandpa is really amazing. Think about it. So many stone sculptures were carved by him alone. How many can there be in the whole world? Mayor puffed out her small chest, as if she also contributed to this. Puffed. Xiaohua laughed. Looking at this little girl who connected the words all the world with the size of Lu Yang, he said, How far is Elder Sister Fairy's Kai family from here? Mayor rode a donkey cart there. I'm afraid it's about 2 hours. Mayor frowned and thought for a while before replying. Which direction? After Mayor pointed in a direction, Xiaohua extended his hand and said with a smile, Mayor, how about I fly you there? Okay, could it be? You really are Immortal Elder? Mayor's words almost made Xiaohua not know whether to laugh or cry. So at this time, she still suspected that he was a swindler. Extending his hand, Xiaohua grabbed Mayor's arm and said, Let's fly. If you're scared, then close your eyes. I'm not scared. Mayor clenched her teeth, seemingly unwilling to admit defeat. Okay, Xiaohua praised and flew into the air. At this time, there were many people in the town who saw this. They all stood respectfully and looked on with envy. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.